Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back to the High Middle Ages, not as a knight in shining armor or a noble in a drafty castle, but as something far more ambitious. We're going to become a merchant. Imagine the crisp clink of coins in your purse, the scent of exotic spices from the east, the respect of your fellow townsfolk. It sounds pretty good, doesn't it? A life of adventure and profit. Well, hold that thought. The reality is a long, muddy, treacherous slog where everything from the roads to the regulations to the rats in your bed is actively trying to kill you and your business. Frankly, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps the channel find other history lovers like us. And while you're at it, I'd love to see where you're all listening from tonight. Go ahead and post your city or country and the local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your story doesn't begin with a flourish of trumpets or a grand inheritance. It begins with a shiver, a deep, bone-rattling cold that seeps up from the packed earth floor of the tiny attic space you call a room. It's still dark, the slanting rays of a distant moon offering no warmth through the single, unglazed window slit. The air is thick with the smell of old straw, wood smoke, and the faint, greasy scent of the tallow candle your master extinguished hours ago downstairs. Your first conscious thought isn't about profit margins or exotic goods. It's about whether the thin, scratchy wool blanket you have is worth pulling tighter, or if the effort will just make you colder. This is your life. You are an apprentice. You swing your legs off the lumpy straw mattress, your bare feet meeting the shockingly cold floor. There's no time to linger. Downstairs, you can already hear the first stirrings of the household, the master's wife coughing, the heavy thud of your master, a man named Ulrich, swinging his own legs out of bed. Your job is to be up and working before he is. Failure to do so results in a sharp word, or, if his mood is particularly sour, a sharp cuff to the back of the head. There is no medieval equivalent of an HR department to complain to. There is only Ulrich. You pull on your tunic, a coarse, brown garment that always seems to be vaguely damp and smells of sweat and soot. Down the creaking wooden ladder you go, into the main room of the house, which doubles as the shop front. Your first task, as always, is the fire. The embers from last night are a pile of pale gray ash. You carefully uncover the few stubborn, glowing red specks at the very bottom, coaxing them with dry kindling and your own breath, puffing until your cheeks ache and your vision swims. The smoke stings your eyes long before the flame catches and begins to offer its pathetic heat. This is your reward, the right to not freeze quite as quickly. Once the fire is sputtering to life, you unbolt the heavy front door. The pre-dawn air that rushes in is somehow even colder, carrying the stench of the street, a potent cocktail of mud, animal dung, and the contents of 100 chamber pots tossed from the windows above. Your next chore is to sweep the shop floor. This involves chasing dust bunnies the size of small cats and trying to nudge bits of yesterday's dirt and grime out into the street, a futile effort that feels like trying to sweep the tide. Your master, Ulrich, finally descends. He's a stout man with a permanently suspicious squint, his belt straining to contain a belly full of cheap ale and middling success. He grunts a morning greeting, which sounds more like an accusation, and inspects your work. He finds a spot you missed, of course. He always does. He points at it with a stubby finger. A lazy boy makes a poor merchant, he says, the same thing he says at least twice a week. Wealth does not stick to dirty floors. You nod, murmur an apology, and sweep the offending corner again with burning cheeks. You are bound to this man, to this house, by a legal document known as an indenture. You remember the day your father, a struggling weaver with too many children and not enough work, brought you here. You were 12. Ulrich had examined you like a horse, checking your teeth, feeling the muscle in your arms. A deal was struck. For the next 7 years, a standard term for most trades, you would work for Ulrich. In exchange, he would house you, feed you, and teach you the mysteries of his trade. In his case, dealing in wool and finished cloth. Your father paid him a fee for the privilege, a sum that represented years of his own savings. You are not just an employee, you are an investment. An investment Ulrich seems determined to get his money's worth out of, one miserable chore at a time. Historians still argue whether the primary purpose of apprenticeship was genuine skill transfer or simply a source of cheap, controllable labor for the master. From where you're standing, shivering in the gloom of a cold Tuesday morning, the cheap labor argument feels pretty convincing. Breakfast is a thin oat pottage, barely warmed by the new fire, eaten standing up in the corner of the shop. It's bland and watery, but it's food. As you eat, Ulrich begins his daily instructions. He wants the new bales of raw wool from Flanders moved from the back shed into the main storeroom. They are heavy, greasy, and smell strongly of sheep. He wants you to take a bolt of the cheap, undyed russet cloth over to the tailor on Fishstall Street and collect the payment he's owed. And he wants you to spend the afternoon restacking every single bolt of finished cloth in the shop, checking for moth damage and damp. It's a task designed less for organization and more for keeping your idle hands busy. The morning is spent hauling the wool. Each bale is a struggle, the rough fibers catching on your tunic, the lanolin grease coating your hands and face. It's back-breaking, repetitive work, and your only companions are the spiders in the shed and the ever-present threat of Ulrich's displeasure. When you finally finish, drenched in sweat despite the chill, you're handed the bolt of russet cloth and a lunch of bread and hard cheese. The cheese has a faint green fuzz on one edge, which you carefully cut away. The trip to the tailor is a brief, welcome escape from the shop, but the streets are their own challenge. You navigate a river of mud, dodging a cart piled high with dripping offal, stepping around a group of gossiping women, and trying to look inconspicuous. As an apprentice, you are the lowest rung of the town's social ladder. You are a target for bullies, a figure of fun for other, older apprentices, and largely invisible to anyone of importance. You deliver the cloth and, after a bit of haggling on the tailor's part, collect the coins. The weight of them in your small leather pouch is both a comfort and a terror. This is the part of the trade that sings to you, the tangible result of a transaction. But you also know that losing it would be catastrophic. Ulrich would likely beat you, and your father might even be held liable for the debt. Your indenture doesn't just bind your labor, it binds your life. A quirky but common feature of these contracts was the inclusion of behavioral clauses. As the 7 years pass, they do not fly by in a cinematic montage of changing seasons viewed from your attic window. They crawl. They trudge. Each day is a stone laid upon the one before it, building a long, weary wall of servitude. But one morning, you wake up and the wall is finished. You are 19 years old. You have served your time. You are no longer Ulrich's apprentice. You are a journeyman, a man who knows the difference between Cotswold and Flemish wool by scent alone, who can estimate the weight of a bolt of cloth to within a few ounces just by lifting it. You have your freedom. Freedom, you quickly discover, is a cold and empty room. Ulrich presents you with a new tunic, a finer weave than your old one, a deep, respectable brown, and a small pouch with a few coins, a final payment for your loyal service. It's more of a severance package, really. He wishes you well, with an uncharacteristic lack of grumpiness. He has, after all, squeezed 7 years of cheap, hard labor out of you and your father's initial fee. He's come out well ahead. You shake his hand, nod a respectful farewell to his wife, and walk out of the shop, not for an errand, but for good. The street, that familiar river of mud and refuse, looks different. Before, it was a gauntlet to be run. Now, it's a landscape of terrifying possibility. You have the skills. You have the knowledge. What you don't have is capital. The few coins in your purse might keep you fed and housed in a cheap room for a week or two, but they won't buy you a single bale of raw wool. To be a merchant, you need to buy goods. To buy goods, you need money. A lot of money. It's the first and most brutal paradox of your new life. You need wealth to create wealth. Your first stop is the guild hall. The Drapers' Guild is the heart of the cloth trade in this town, a powerful institution that sets prices, regulates quality, and protects its members. You stand before a committee of senior merchants, men like Ulrich but older, richer, and with even more suspicious squints. You make your case. You are a fully trained journeyman. You have ideas. You want to specialize in sourcing the new, lighter cloths from the Low Countries that are becoming fashionable. You are ambitious, hard-working, and you know the trade inside and out. You ask them for a loan to get you started. They listen patiently, their faces as impassive as stone carvings. Then they politely, almost gently, refuse you. You have no collateral, no family name of any standing, no property to pledge. You are, in their eyes, a boy with notions. They are not in the business of funding notions. Prove yourself first, son, one of them says, a dismissive pat on the shoulder, sending you on your way. Work for another master, save your wages. Then we shall see. Work for another master. The thought makes your stomach clench. To trade one form of servitude for another, only this time for a pittance of a wage. It would take you a decade, maybe more, to save enough to even think about starting on your own. By then, your ambition would have shriveled and died. You need to be bold. You need to take a risk. And that means you need to find someone else who deals in risk. The church, for its part, is no help at all. In fact, it's the source of the problem. A mainstream historical fact of the era is the church's strict prohibition of usury, the lending of money at interest. It was considered a sin, a way of making money from time itself, which belonged only to God. This pious stance had the practical effect of pushing all money lending into a legal and moral gray zone. Christian merchants and bankers had to create incredibly complicated workarounds to hide their interest-based loans, calling them fees, or structuring them as foreign exchange deals. It was a system built on a holy loophole. But for a straightforward, high-risk loan to a nobody like you, you need a specialist. You spend a few days asking around, speaking in low tones in the back of alehouses you can barely afford to be in. The name you hear, whispered with a mixture of fear and necessity, is Isaac. He is a moneylender. And because of the church's laws on usury, which didn't apply to non-Christians lending to Christians, many of the people in this necessary, if despised, profession were Jewish. They were legally barred from owning land or joining most guilds, pushing them into one of the few economic niches left open: finance. You find Isaac's house on a narrow, quiet street. It's not a palace, but it is conspicuously well maintained. The door is solid oak with heavy iron fittings. The window shutters are new and fit snugly in their frames. This is not a house that invites trouble. You hesitate for a long time, the few coins in your purse feeling impossibly light. This is a threshold you cannot uncross. Going to a moneylender is a desperate act, a stain on your reputation before you've even had a chance to build one. But the alternative is to fade away, to become another man's wage slave for the rest of your life. You take a deep breath, the air smelling of damp stone and coal smoke, and knock. The man who opens the door is not Isaac, but a servant who looks you up and down, taking in your new but still cheap tunic, and asks your business. You state your purpose, your voice sounding thin and reedy. After a moment, you are led inside. The interior is dark and cool. The air smells of beeswax, old parchment, and something else, a faint, sweet spiciness you can't quite place. You are shown into a small, wood-paneled room. There's a heavy table, 2 chairs, and a large, locked chest bound in iron. There are no frivolous decorations. This room is a tool, a place of business. Isaac enters. He is an older man, dressed in a simple but well-made robe. He has a trim gray beard and eyes that seem to see right through your carefully prepared speech. He does not smile. He gestures for you to sit, and listens. You tell him everything. Your apprenticeship with Ulrich, your knowledge of wool, your plan to import the lighter fabrics, your rejection by the guild. You lay out your ambition, your hopes, your desperation. You try to sound confident, like a good investment, but you know your fear is leaking through. He asks questions. Sharp, precise questions. Who are your potential suppliers in Bruges? How will you transport the goods? What are the current market prices for woad-dyed blues? What is your expected profit margin? He is not testing your character. He is calculating his odds. It's the most terrifying job interview of your life. You feel like a single, flimsy piece of parchment being held up to a candle, all its flaws and thin spots illuminated for him to see. Finally, he falls silent, steepling his fingers. He looks at you for a long time. The risk is considerable, he says, his voice even. You have nothing. If you fail, I have nothing to take from you. My failure would be my ruin. You say, a little too quickly. I will not fail. He gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod. He has made his decision. He names a sum. It's enough. Just enough to get started. And then he names the terms. The interest rate is 40%. Not over the life of the loan, but per year. If you can't pay it back within the agreed-upon 12 months, the interest compounds. And you must pledge everything as collateral. Not just the good. That bag of silver doesn't just weigh down your shoulder, it weighs down your soul. Every step you take away from your hometown is a step deeper into a terrifying wilderness of risk. You don't have a horse. That's a luxury for established men, not for novices running on borrowed time and borrowed money. You travel with a group of other merchants and pilgrims heading north, towards the coast. You pay a small fee to walk with them, not for their company, but for the vague illusion of safety in numbers. At night, you don't sleep. You sit with your back against a tree, the heavy bag clutched to your chest like a fussy newborn, listening to every snapped twig and rustle of leaves, convinced that each sound is a bandit preparing to slit your throat for Isaac's silver. Weeks later, footsore, paranoid, and smelling much worse than when you started, you arrive. You arrive in Bruges. And it breaks your brain. Your hometown is a respectable place, with a few thousand souls. Bruges is a swirling vortex of humanity. The sheer noise is the first thing that hits you. A constant, deafening babble of languages you can't even identify. Flemish, French, German, Italian, English, Spanish, all churned together in the damp sea air. The port is a forest of masts, ships from Genoa and Venice bobbing next to stout cogs from the Hanseatic cities of Lübeck and Hamburg. This is one of the great northern hubs of commerce, a fact you knew in theory, but which is now slamming into your senses with the force of a physical blow. A true entrepot, where the wool of England is traded for the wines of France, the silks of Italy for the furs of Russia, the spices of the distant East for the salt fish of the North Sea. You are a tiny, insignificant minnow that has just been spat out into the ocean. The air smells of money. It also smells of tar, salt, fish, wet wool, and 1,000 unwashed bodies. But underneath it all is the sharp, metallic tang of commerce. You find a room in a crowded, noisy boarding house near the docks, paying a price that makes you physically wince, and barricade the door with the only chair. You stash the coin bag under the lumpy mattress, a hiding place so obvious it's almost clever. Almost. You know you can't linger. Every day you spend here is a day Isaac's 40% interest is growing, a monstrous, invisible weed choking your future. You need to find your cloth. The lighter weaves, the ones you stake your entire future on. But you can't just walk into a factory outlet. The trade here is a jealously guarded, multi-layered beast. You need to find a broker, a middleman who can connect a small-time foreign buyer like you with the weavers or wholesalers. Your old master, Ulrich, in a moment of what might have been pity or just a desire to be rid of you, had given you one name. Willem, he'd grunted. In Bruges, near the cloth hull. He's a weasel, but he knows everyone. Don't trust him further than you can spit. It takes you a full day of asking, being ignored, and being sent in the wrong direction. A fun game the locals like to play with outsiders. But you finally find him. Willem's office is a cramped space above a bakery, thick with the smell of warm bread and scheming. Willem himself is a thin, twitchy man with darting eyes and fingers stained with ink. He looks you over, his gaze lingering on your worn boots and the anxious set of your jaw. He can smell the desperation on you. A friend of Ulrich's, he says with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Poor man. Ulrich owes me for 3 bolts of Ypres violet from last year. But, for a friend of his, I will do what I can. You describe what you're looking for. The lighter woolens, the says, and the serges. Good quality, fashionable colors, but not so expensive as to be out of reach for the rising class of guild masters and prosperous artisans back home. Willem nods, strokes his chin, and makes a show of thinking. Difficult, he says. The Italians are buying everything. The demand is immense. The prices, he lets the word hang in the air, a plump, tempting fruit just out of your reach. He tells you to come back the next day. The waiting is agony. You pass the time wandering the city, watching porters unload barrels of wine and great sacks of alum, a crucial chemical used in the dyeing process to fix the colors. You stand before the belfry, the great bell tower that dominates the market square, a symbol of the city's wealth and power. It makes you feel impossibly small. It's like the whole world is engaged in a frantic, profitable dance, and you don't know the steps. When you return, Willem has samples. He lays out small squares of cloth on his table under the light from the window. A vibrant blue, a rich green, a handsome gray. The feel is right. They are light, the weave is tight. From a very reliable weaver, just outside Poperinghe, Willem says, naming a town famous for its cloth. The best quality. You won't find better. You run the fabric between your thumb and forefinger, trying to channel 7 years of Ulrich's grumbled lessons. You hold it up to the light. You even, when Willem is distracted for a moment, put a corner of it to your tongue, a trick some merchants used, though what they were tasting for is anyone's guess. It's probably the medieval equivalent of kicking the tires on a used car. It makes you look like you know what you're doing. The price he quotes is high, but not impossible. It would consume almost all of your loan capital, leaving you with precious little for the costs of transport and the endless tolls you'll face on the journey home. You hesitate. A man from Lübeck was just in here this morning, Willem says casually, beginning to fold up the samples. He was very interested. Very. I told him I had another potential buyer. It's the oldest trick in the book, the phantom competing offer. You know it's a trick. He knows you know it's a trick. But the fear that it might be true, that your one chance might vanish, is a cold knot in your stomach. You begin to haggle. It's a clumsy, sweat-inducing performance. You counter with a lower price, trying to sound firm, experienced. He scoffs, theatrically. You point out a tiny, almost invisible flaw in the weave of the green sample. He dismisses it as a mark of its handmade authenticity. After half an hour of this dance, you agree on a price. It's a tiny reduction, a token victory for you that leaves him with the lion's share of the profit. But you've made a deal. Now comes the inspection of the actual goods. The deal is for 10 full bolts of cloth. Willem takes you to a nearby warehouse. And here is where the real terror begins. The warehouse is cavernous and poorly lit. Bales and bolts are stacked to the rafters. Your 10 bolts are brought out. They are tightly wrapped and bound, with a lead seal attached to the end of each one. This seal is, in theory, your guarantee. It's the mark of the Alnager, the official city or guild inspector, who was supposed to have measured the bolt to ensure it was the correct length and inspected it for quality. This is where a quirky and often frustrating bit of medieval commerce comes into play. The Almager was supposed to be an impartial arbiter of quality, but they were also men who could be bribed. A weaver could produce a bolt of cloth that was a few feet short, or had a shoddy section in the middle where no one would look, and a few coins in the right hand would get him the receipt from Willem feels flimsy, a pathetic stand-in for the mountain of silver you no longer possess. That silver, at least, was compact. It was portable. Your 10 bolts of cloth, on the other hand, are currently sitting in a dusty warehouse, an inert, bulky, and profoundly inconvenient pile of potential profit. They are your problem now. A very large, very heavy problem. The first, most humbling lesson of being a merchant is that goods do not magically transport themselves. You head to the warehouse, your receipt clutched in your hand. The warehouse master, a man with arms like small barrels himself, looks at your piece of parchment and grunts. He leads you to your purchase. There they are, 10 bolts, each about the length of a man and as thick as a strong tree branch, weighing more than you'd care to admit. Lifting one is a struggle. Carrying it for any distance is out of the question. You can't just tuck them under your arm and start walking home. Your first expense is hiring a pair of porters to move the cloth from the warehouse to a nearby stable yard where you've rented a small, dry corner for an exorbitant daily fee. The porters are rough-looking men who loiter near the docks, their faces hardened by wind and suspicion. They eye your fine cloth with a mixture of professional indifference and personal calculation. You haggle over the price for a journey of no more than a few hundred paces. They know you're a foreigner and have no other choice. You end up paying them a price that feels like theft, and you watch with your heart in your throat as these two strangers hoist your entire net worth onto their shoulders and carry it away. You scurry after them like a nervous hen, terrified they'll simply turn a corner and vanish forever. They don't. They deposit the bolts in your rented space, take their pay, and leave without a word. And now you're alone with your goods, the smell of horse manure and damp hay a thick blanket in the air. The challenge of packing begins. This isn't about just wrapping them up. It's about waging a preventative war against a dozen different enemies. The primary foe is water. A single soaking rainstorm, an unexpected slip into a river, even a persistently humid day could be disastrous. The dyes, especially the vibrant blues and greens you paid a premium for, could run and bleed, turning your beautiful cloth into a splotchy, unsellable mess. The fabric could mildew, acquiring a stench that no amount of airing out will ever remove. Water is ruin. So, your first task is to find waterproofing. This means oilcloth, a heavy canvas treated with linseed oil until it's stiff, smelly, and water-resistant. You leave your precious bolts under the watchful eye of the stable master, for another small fee, of course, and go in search of a chandler. You find a shop selling rope, wax, and tallow, and you buy as much of the greasy, yellow-brown oilcloth as you can afford. It costs far more than you expected. Everything costs more than you expected. Back in the stable yard, you begin the laborious process of wrapping. You unroll the oilcloth on the dirty floor, and then, one by one, you carefully roll a bolt of your fine wool inside it, like a pig in a blanket. You fold the ends, tucking them in tightly, and bind the whole sausage-shaped package with stout cord. It's awkward, greasy work. The oil from the cloth gets all over your hands and tunic. The smell is pungent and clings to you. But with each bolt you seal away, You feel a tiny flicker of security. You are building a fortress for your wares. Next, you need protection from the physical world, from bumps, from falls, from the splintered corner of a cart, from the sharp edge of a rock. The oilcloth won't stop a tear. For that, you need something solid. You need barrels. This sends you on another journey through the commercial labyrinth of Bruges, this time in search of a cooper. Coopers were among the most respected craftsmen of the medieval period. A well-made, watertight barrel was a masterpiece of geometry and skill, essential for transporting everything from wine and beer to salted fish and nails. A shoddy barrel could mean the loss of an entire shipment. You find the Cooper's District, a noisy street filled with the rhythmic thump 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 of mallets on wood and the smell of toasted oak. You need barrels that are long and wide enough for your cloth rolls, but not so heavy that they'll double your transport costs. You find a master cooper in his workshop, surrounded by staves of wood and hoops of iron. You explain your needs. He shows you some long spindle barrels, normally used for shipping tapestries or documents. They are perfect. They are also, he informs you with a straight face, incredibly expensive. He knows you're in a bind. You need to leave the city. You can't take the cloth without barrels. The negotiation is brief and painful. You agree to a price that makes you feel physically ill. Part of the deal is that he will burn his personal mark into the lid of each barrel, a small star inside a circle. This is his signature, a common practice for master craftsmen. It's a guarantee of quality, a tiny speck of accountability in a sea of anonymous transactions. A leaky barrel with his mark on it would be a stain on his reputation. It's the closest thing you have to a warranty. You pay the porters again to haul the empty barrels to your stable. Now the final, frustrating stage of packing begins. You and a stable hand, bribed with a coin, struggle to slide the oilcloth-wrapped bolts into the barrels. It's a tight fit. You have to stuff straw and wood shavings into the gaps to stop the bolt from rattling around. A quirky but common packing material was whatever was cheap and available. While rich merchants might use clean wool scraps, a man like you, on a budget, uses straw that might have been slept on by a goat last week. You take a sniff. It smells a bit goaty. You pray the stench doesn't work its way through the oilcloth and into your fine wool. You've just invented the medieval equivalent of packing peanuts. Finally, each bolt is nestled in its barrel. The cooper's men arrive to hammer the lids into place, the noise echoing in the stable. The iron bands are fixed. Your 10 bolts of cloth are now 10 anonymous, heavy wooden barrels. Your investment is sealed away from sight, a Schrodinger's cat of commerce. The cloth inside is either pristine and valuable, or it has a flaw you missed, or it's already starting to mildew from a damp spot on the goaty straw. You won't know for sure until you reach your destination and pry the lids off. The barrels are ready, but they are also 10 immovable objects. This leads to the final and most expensive preparatory step: hiring transport. You need pack animals and a guide. You find the muleteer's corner near the city's south gate. Here, tough, weathered men who spend their lives on the road offer their services. You approach one of them, a man with a face like a worn leather map and quiet, calculating eyes. You tell him your destination. He names a price per barrel, per day. The number is so high you almost laugh. When you don't, he knows he has you. Historians still argue whether the high cost of overland transport was a greater barrier to medieval trade than the danger from bandits. As you stand there, watching your few remaining silver coins mentally fly out of your pouch and into this man's pocket, you imagine the journey home would be, if not pleasant, at least purposeful. You envision striding along a proper road, your wares safely stowed, your mind focused on future profits. The reality is mud. So much mud. The great Roman roads, those legendary feats of engineering, are by this point in history mostly a memory. A few stretches remain, patched and repaired by local lords, but for the most part, the road is a euphemism for a wide, meandering scar of churned earth that turns into a swamp with the slightest drizzle. Your muleteer, Henri, seems to navigate this terrain by instinct, his eyes constantly scanning the ground ahead. He leads you away from the main track whenever possible, preferring to cut across a farmer's field, earning you a shouted curse, or follow a barely there path through a copse of trees. He's not avoiding traffic, he's avoiding the worst of the quagmire. The main road is where heavily laden wagons get bogged down to their axles, where horses strain and break their legs, where progress is measured in feet per hour. Your nimble mules, he explains with a grunt, are better off on the fringes. For you, it means a grueling, endless trudge. You are on foot. Your fine, newish journeyman's boots, a source of pride when you left home, are now perpetually caked in a thick layer of muck. The sucking sound of your feet pulling free from the mud is the constant rhythm of your day. Each step is an effort. Your calves burn, your back aches from the small pack you carry with your personal effects, and a persistent dampness has settled deep into your bones. The mules, laden with your barrels, are having an equally miserable time. They slip and slide. Henry's boy, a silent youth named Jean, is constantly at their side, cajoling them, pushing their haunches to get them up a slippery incline, or pulling on their bridles to steer them around a particularly nasty-looking puddle that could be a foot deep. A few times a day, a mule will lose its footing entirely, stumbling to its knees with a pained grunt. This is a moment of pure terror for you. The barrels lurch violently, the wooden staves groaning under the strain. Your entire fortune is saved from smashing open on a rock only by Henry's expert knots. He and Jean will calmly unstrap the load, get the beast back on its feet, check it for injuries, and then painstakingly reload the barrels, ensuring the balance is perfect once more. Each such incident costs half an hour and a pint of your sweat, even though you're just watching, helpless. This is the tyranny of the road. A mainstream historical fact is that overland transport in the Middle Ages was incredibly slow. A merchant might average only 15 to 20 miles on a good day. But that's an average. On a bad day, a day of endless rain and deep mud, you might make 5 miles. A brisk walk. And for that privilege, you are paying Henri a full day's fee. The slowness is eating away at your potential profit just as surely as the mud is eating away at your boots. It's a slow-motion disaster, a financial drain measured in footsteps. The landscape is a monotonous blur of damp fields, skeletal winter trees, and low, gray skies. There is a profound loneliness to it. You pass other travelers, but there's no friendly camaraderie of the road. Everyone is suspicious. A lone traveler is a potential victim. A group of travelers is a potential threat. You learn to adopt the same expression as Henri, a guarded, neutral mask that invites no conversation. And then there are the bandits. You don't see them at first. You just feel a change in Henry's posture. He becomes even more watchful. He steers the mules into the cover of a dense patch of forest, a place you would think is more dangerous, not less. He holds up a hand for silence. You stop, your heart suddenly hammering against your ribs. You can hear nothing but the wind in the bare branches and the heavy breathing of the mules. Henri points. You follow his gaze, and there, on the main track you've been avoiding, you see them. A group of half a dozen men, lounging by the side of the road. They are not dressed like peasants or pilgrims. They have swords at their belts and short bows slung over their shoulders. They look bored, patient. They are waiting for a slow, heavy wagon, waiting for a merchant grown complacent, waiting for someone who didn't hire a guide as cautious as Henri. You watch them for a few minutes, a pack of wolves waiting for a lame sheep to wander by. You are close enough to see the grimace on one man's face as he laughs at some crude joke. The sight makes the damp cold in your bones feel like a frozen spike. Henri waits until they are a safe distance behind before he nudges the mules back onto your parallel, miserable path. Route yours *, he mutters. He explains that they are former soldiers, mercenaries left unemployed by the end of some petty lord's war. They have no trade but violence, so they form gangs and pillage the fat country, as the saying goes. They are a plague upon the land, more dangerous than any wild animal. This is where you learn a quirky and terrifying tidbit of medieval life. Not all bandits were desperate peasants. Some of the most notorious and successful were actually down-on-their-luck knights or minor nobles, stripped of their lands by a more powerful lord or disinherited by the laws of primogeniture, which gave everything to the eldest son. These men of good birth took to the roads with their horses, their armor, and their military training. A peasant with a club was a threat. A trained knight with a lance, leading a small retinue of armed thugs, was a catastrophe. They knew the terrain, they had a sense of military tactics, and they were utterly ruthless. They were the organized crime of the era. You look at your 10 barrels. They are so obvious. They scream valuable goods. There is no way to disguise them. Your only defense is Henry's caution and a lot of blind luck. From that moment on, every shadow in the woods looks like an ambush. Every distant shout is the signal for an attack. You start walking closer to the mules, as if your physical proximity could somehow protect your investment. It's a foolish, useless gesture, but it's all you can do. Historians still argue about the actual prevalence of banditry. Some chronicles and poems make it sound as if every forest was swarming with robbers, while economic records show that trade, somehow, continued to flow. Was the threat exaggerated, a boogeyman to scare travelers, or was it a constant, grinding reality that merchants simply had to factor in as a cost of doing business? As you lie on the cold ground that night, huddled by a tiny, smokeless fire, listening to the howl of a distant wolf, you aren't interested in the academic debate. The fear is real enough for you. To make matters worse, the natural world is also trying to ruin you. One afternoon, a cold, sleeting rain begins to fall. The track dissolves into a slippery, viscous soup. The lead mule, The one carrying your 2 barrels of expensive blue cloth loses its footing on a steep, muddy bank. It slides, grunting in panic, and comes to rest at a sickening angle in a ditch, half submerged in filthy water. One of your precious barrels is almost completely underwater. The mud does not relent. It becomes a malevolent entity, a third party in your business arrangement with Henri, and it is winning. After another full day of travel where you cover less ground than a determined snail, Henri finally stops. He squints at the gray, weeping sky, at the impassable morass ahead, and then at a small, sluggish stream trickling through the reeds nearby. He points. "The Meuse," he says. "Not the stream itself, but where it leads. We follow this. We find a boat. It's not a suggestion, it's a verdict. The road has failed you. The cost in time and animal exhaustion has become too great. The only way forward is to float." The idea of a boat, of gliding along instead of fighting for every step, sounds like a blessing. A foolish, naive part of you pictures a gentle, lazy journey down a placid river. This part of you is about to get a very rude awakening. You spend the rest of the day trekking along the stream, which gradually widens until it merges with the slow, gray-brown expanse of a major river. Eventually, you come to a place that could generously be called a settlement. It's a handful of hovels, a dilapidated tavern, and a rickety-looking jetty jutting out into the current. This, Henri informs you, is a river port. It is here you will find your luxury cruise. There is only one vessel of any size moored at the jetty, a wide, flat-bottomed barge with a single, crude mast. Its owner is a man named Arnulf, who seems to have been carved from the same gnarled, water-stained wood as his boat. He has one good eye, the other being a milky, unseeing orb. He listens to your request, passage for 3 men, 3 mules, and 8 large barrels, without changing his sour expression. He chews on a piece of dried fish, the smell of which precedes him by several yards. He names his price. The figure is so high, you feel a moment of dizzying disbelief. It's not a fare, it's a ransom. It represents a huge portion of the cash you have left for your entire return journey. Henri launches into a tirade of protest, his French subtly becoming much faster and more colorful. Arnulf just shrugs. He gestures with his fishy thumb at the river, then at the muddy track you came from. He is the only boatman for miles with a barge big enough for your cargo. He has a monopoly on your hope, and he is going to squeeze it for every last drop of silver. You do the frantic mental math. Another week on the roads, if they're even passable, would cost nearly as much in fees to Henri, not to mention the risk of another accident. You look at the 2 barrels of blue cloth you've already lost to the mud. You can't afford another setback like that. With a feeling of profound defeat, you agree. You count the coins into his grimy, calloused hand. Each clink a little death knell for your profit margin. Now comes the ordeal of loading. Mules are creatures of the land. They do not like water, and they especially do not like walking on a narrow, swaying wooden plank from a muddy bank onto a floating, unstable platform. The first mule plants its feet and refuses to budge. It takes all 3 of you, pushing, pulling, and whispering a combination of threats and reassurances, to get the terrified animal aboard. The other 2, seeing their companion's fate, are even more difficult. The process is a chaotic mess of flailing hooves, panicked brays and shouted curses. Then come the barrels. Arnulf directs the loading with a series of grunts. They are rolled up the plank and onto the deck with heavy, jarring thuds that make you flinch every time. You have a horrifying vision of a barrel slipping, smashing open on the jetty, and spilling its precious, finely woven contents into the river. But eventually, all 8 barrels are aboard, lashed down in the center of the barge. Your small caravan is now a floating island of anxiety. The barge itself is nothing more than a planked-over raft with a low railing that wouldn't stop a determined child from falling overboard. There is no cabin, no shelter, no roof. You are completely exposed to the elements. The mules are tethered at one end, you and your companions at the other, huddled amongst the barrels. This is your 5-star accommodation for the next phase of your journey. Arnulf shoves off from the jetty with a long pole. The barge swings out into the current, and you begin to move. The motion is, at first, a relief. It's smooth, quiet. The banks slide by, a parade of reeds and willow trees. But you soon realize that river travel has its own unique set of perils. The river is not a uniform, placid highway. It is a living thing, full of secrets and dangers. Arnulf, standing at the stern with a massive steering oar, is constantly reading the water's surface, his one good eye scanning for the subtle ripples that betray a hidden sandbar or the telltale V-shape of a submerged log. A snag that could tear a hole in the hull. An hour into the journey, a jarring, scraping sound shrieks from beneath you. The entire barge lurches, and you come to a dead stop. You're grounded. Arnulf lets out a string of curses that could peel paint. He and Henri grab long poles and begin probing the riverbed, pushing and levering with all their might. For 20 minutes, you are stuck fast, a helpless, stationary target in the middle of the wide river. Finally, with a great groaning sound, the barge breaks free. No real harm done, but the incident shreds your nerves. Your cargo is only safe as long as Arnulf's one good eye doesn't miss a trick. Then there is the threat of people. The river is a lifeline for trade, which makes it a hunting ground. One afternoon, Henri stiffens and points upstream. Another boat. It's smaller, faster, propelled by 6 oarsmen, and it's heading directly for you. There's no reason for them to be on an intercept course. Arnulf spits into the river, a gesture of profound disgust. Pirates, he says, the word landing like a stone in the pit of your stomach. There is nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. You are a slow, heavy target. Henri quietly loosens the knife at his belt. You have nothing but your own small eating dagger. You frantically try to cover your barrels with some spare canvas, a pathetic attempt to look like you're carrying something worthless, like firewood or turnips. The other boat draws closer. You can see the faces of the men now. They are hard, rough-looking. They are not fishermen. You brace yourself, your mind flashing back to Isaac the moneylender. Defaulting on his loan would be a life sentence of servitude. Getting robbed here would guarantee it. The boat comes alongside, its occupants staring at you, at your barrels, at the nervous mules. An eternity passes in a few heartbeats. Then, for no reason you can discern, the man who seems to be their leader barks an order, and they pull away, continuing downriver without a word. Maybe they were looking for a richer prize. Maybe they were scared off by the sight of Henri. Maybe they just enjoyed inspiring terror. You will never know. You sink back against a barrel, your legs weak with relief. Historians still argue whether the armed patrols occasionally sent out by powerful towns or guilds actually deterred river piracy, or simply moved the problem further downstream into less policed jurisdictions. From your vantage point on this, the river journey ends not with a triumphant arrival, but with a grimy offloading at a bustling coastal port. The air here tastes different. The damp, earthy smell of the river is gone, replaced by the sharp, briny tang of salt and the pervasive scent of low tide. This is a bigger, louder, more serious place than the river settlement. The ships here aren't barges. They are proper seagoing vessels with high, curving prows and tall masts that scrape the gray sky. Arnulf the boatman nudges his barge against a slime-slicked stone quay and begins untying the lashings on your barrels with an air of finality. Henri the muleteer leads his animals, still skittish, onto solid ground. Your business with them is concluded. You pay Henri the remainder of his fee, a painful disbursement that leaves your coin pouch feeling frighteningly light. He takes the money with a grunt, gives you a curt nod that might be respect or might be dismissal, and leads his mules away, disappearing into the crowded streets. You'll never see him again. You pay Arnold for the privilege of unloading your barrels onto the quay. He takes the coins, his good eye already scanning for his next customer, and pulls his barge back into the channel without so much as a goodbye. And then you are alone, utterly alone, standing guard over 8 heavy barrels on a chaotic dockside in a foreign country. Porters shout, sailors curse in a half-dozen languages, and gulls scream overhead. Every person who walks past seems to eye your cargo with a speculative glance. You feel like a man standing on a small, rapidly melting iceberg of personal property. Your next task is to find passage on one of those seagoing ships. This requires finding a captain, a man who is part sailor, part businessman, and part gambler. You ask around, and are directed to a tavern called the Salty Dog, a name so unoriginal it's almost reassuring. The place is dark, loud, and smells of stale beer, pipe smoke, and wet wool. It's filled with the kind of men whose faces are a testament to hard lives lived at sea. Tanned, wrinkled, with eyes accustomed to squinting at distant horizons. After a few false starts, you find him. Captain Ewald. He's a broad, bearded man from the Hanseatic League, a powerful confederation of merchant guilds and their cities that dominated trade in the North and Baltic Seas. He is the master of a vessel called the St. Jude. You state your business. You need to transport 8 barrels of cloth south, back towards your home region. He listens, sipping his ale, his eyes appraising you. He asks what's in the barrels. You tell him. He nods slowly. Cloth is a good cargo. It's valuable, but it doesn't spoil like wine or stink like salted herring. He names his price. It's astronomical. It's more than you paid for the river barge, more than you paid Henri. It is, you realize with a sinking heart, almost everything you have left. You try to haggle, but it's a pathetic attempt. He's the only captain sailing south in the next fortnight. He holds all the cards. You are hemorrhaging money. Every decision, every leg of this journey, is a fresh wound. You agree to his terms, feeling the cold tendrils of Isaac's 40% interest wrap a little tighter around your neck. The St. Jude is a cog. This is the workhorse of the northern seas, a fact of medieval maritime life. It's not a sleek, fast vessel. It is, to be blunt, a tub. It's short, wide, and deep, with a rounded bottom and high sides. It's designed for one thing: to carry the maximum amount of cargo with the minimum amount of crew. It has a single, massive mast with a single, massive square sail. A clinker-built ship, its hull planks overlap, like siding on a house, which makes it strong and flexible, but also means it has 1,000 seams that constantly weep and leak. At the stern, rising high above the deck, is a structure called the aftercastle, from which the captain steers the ship with a newish invention, the sternpost rudder. It is a functional, graceless, and, you pray, sturdy vessel. Loading your barrels is another ordeal. They are hoisted aboard by a crude wooden crane powered by a creaking winch, then lowered into the dark, cavernous hold. You watch each one descend into the gloom, feeling a profound sense of powerlessness. Down there, they will be wedged amongst barrels of beer, sacks of grain, and crates of unknown goods. You won't see them again until you make landfall. You have to trust Captain Ewald. You have to trust his ship. You have to trust his God. The ship is crowded. There is no passenger deck. You and a handful of other travelers, a pair of monks on a pilgrimage, a sour-faced tax collector, and a nervous-looking man who might be a fellow merchant or a fugitive, are assigned a patch of deck space near the bow, amongst coils of rope and the ship's anchor. This is where you will eat, sleep, and live for the duration of the voyage. Your only shelter is a piece of oilcloth you can rig up if it rains. The ship casts off. As the shore recedes, a new kind of dread sets in, different from the fear of bandits or river pirates. It is the fear of the immense, empty, indifferent sea. The land vanishes, and you are surrounded by a 360-degree panorama of gray water and gray sky. The world shrinks to the confines of this creaking, groaning wooden vessel. And then the sickness begins. The cog, with its round bottom, does not slice through the waves. It wallows. It rolls and pitches in a complex, unpredictable rhythm that is perfectly designed to upset the human stomach. At first, it's just a vague queasiness. Soon, you are emptying the contents of your stomach over the rail, your body racked with miserable, heaving spasms. You are not alone. The sour-faced tax collector is a ghastly shade of green. You spend the first 2 days in a wretched state of semi-consciousness, too sick to eat, too sick to care if the ship sinks. Life aboard the cog is a study in misery. The smell alone is an assault. The ever-present stench of bilge water sloshing in the bottom of the hold, the eye-watering ammonia from the livestock, a few chickens and a goat, kept in a pen on deck, the unwashed bodies of 50 men crammed together, and the sour reek of seasickness. The food is a new level of awful. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner consist of the same thing. A chunk of salted beef, so tough and briny it makes your teeth ache, and a handful of ship's biscuit or hardtack. This isn't the bread you know. It's a simple flour and water cracker baked until it's as hard as a plank, designed to resist spoilage for months. You have to soak it in your watered-down ale just to make it chewable, a process that often reveals the weevils and maggots baked inside. You learn to eat it in the dark. And how do you know where you're going? Out here, with no landmarks, navigation is a dark art. The most advanced piece of technology on board is the lodestone. a quirky and vital tidbit of medieval seamanship. It's a naturally magnetic piece of iron ore. When the sky is overcast and the sun and stars are hidden, a sailor will take a needle, rub it against the lodestone to magnetize it, and then place it on a piece of straw floating in a bowl of water. The needle will, the sweet, solid feeling of the earth beneath your feet lasts for about an hour. Then, the familiar dread, the constant companion of your journey, returns with a vengeance. You've survived the mud, the river, and the sea. You've successfully gotten your 8 barrels, looking surprisingly intact, though you won't know for sure until you open them, all floated from the St. Jude. You stand on the quay of a bustling port town that is part of your own kingdom, a place where people at least speak a dialect you can mostly understand. And yet, you have never felt more vulnerable. The reason is simple. On the road with Henri, you had his experience. On the river, you had Arnulf's barge. At sea, you were under the protection of Captain Ewald's ship and crew. Now, you have you. A single, tired young man standing next to a pile of valuable goods. The journey home from here is overland, through 200 miles of rolling hills, dense forests, and sparsely populated countryside. It's the final, most dangerous leg. The sea might drown you indifferently, but the men in the woods will kill you with purpose. You cannot move 8 barrels by yourself. You can't even effectively guard them while you go looking for help. You pay a port official an outrageous fee to have your cargo moved to a supposedly secure warehouse, a king's warehouse, for temporary storage. The man who takes your money has the predatory smile of a pike. You know the security is mostly an illusion, but it buys you time. Your first priority is to buy a safe conduct pass. This is a quirky but essential piece of medieval bureaucracy. You go to the office of the regional sheriff, a stuffy room smelling of sealing wax and self-importance. For a fee. Always another fee. A clerk with ink-stained fingers draws up a handsome-looking document on a piece of real parchment. It's full of flourishing script and impressive-looking Latin, declaring that you, the bearer, are a merchant under the king's peace and should be afforded safe passage. It's stamped with the sheriff's official seal. In theory, this piece of paper is a magical ward against trouble. Anyone harming you would be defying the king's authority. In practice, you suspect its main effect is to fill the sheriff's coffers. A bandit in a dark forest is unlikely to be impressed by a wax seal, no matter how official. But not having one is to invite official trouble on top of the unofficial kind. You tuck the expensive parchment into your tunic. It feels like a very flimsy shield. Now for the real problem. Muscle. You need to hire guards. There is no central employment agency for armed men. You find them where they find their other primary source of income, the tavern. You spend the evening in the seediest establishment you can find, a place where the ale is thin and the patrons look like they shave with a broken bottle. You let it be known, quietly, that you're looking to hire a few good men for a journey inland. A trio of them finds you. They materialize at your table as if summoned by the smell of your desperation. Their leader is a man named Giles, tall and wiry with a scar that splits his left eyebrow. His companions are a hulking, silent man he calls Little John, a joke so ancient it has a beard of its own, and a nervous, rat-faced man with shifty eyes. They have swords, leather jacks, and the casual menace of men who solve problems by creating bigger, More violent problems for someone else. You tell them the destination. Giles names a price per day, plus food. The figure is shocking. It's more than you paid the porters, more than you paid the muleteer, more than you paid the boatman. Hiring guards, it turns out, is the single most expensive part of overland travel. They are charging you a premium for their monopoly on violence. You try to haggle. Giles just laughs, a dry, humorless sound. Price is the price, he says. Forests full o' wolves. Some walk on two legs. You want to feed 'em your cloth, you go on your own. The horrible truth is, you need them. But the even more horrible truth is that once you are out in the wilderness, alone with them, what's to stop them from simply murdering you and taking the barrels for themselves? They would be the bandits you're so afraid of. You are paying a wolf to guard the sheep, and you have to pray it isn't hungry. This is the central, terrifying gamble of your profession. You agree to the price. Your coin pouch is now so light it feels like a ghost hanging from your belt. You buy a round of ale to seal the deal, and as you watch them drink, you feel a cold certainty that you have just made a terrible mistake. But it's the only mistake you could have made. The next morning, you assemble your little caravan. You've used the last of your funds to buy a cart and 2 sturdy draft horses. Loading the barrels onto the cart is a noisy, sweaty affair. Giles and his men watch, offering no help, their arms crossed. Their job is to guard, not to labor. You are the merchant, the paymaster, and the manual laborer all in one. Finally, you set off. You sit at the front of the cart, handling the reins, the horses plodding along at a walking pace. Little John walks ahead, scouting the path. Ratface walks behind a cart, and Giles walks beside you, his hand resting casually on the pommel of his long sword. The silence is unnerving. He doesn't make small talk. He just watches the woods that line the road, his eyes constantly scanning. You are acutely aware of the weight of the sword, the casual professionalism of his posture. He is an expert in a field you know nothing about. The first day is uneventful. The second day, the road narrows and plunges into a deep, ancient forest. The trees press in on both sides, their branches interlocking overhead to create a gloomy green tunnel. The air grows still and silent. The cheerful chirping of birds is replaced by an oppressive quiet. This is the kind of place where ambushes happen. You can feel the tension in your shoulders, a tight, painful knot. Every rustle of leaves, every snapped twig, sends a jolt of adrenaline through you. Giles seems to feel it too. He signals for Little John to fall back closer to the cart. He draws his sword, the hiss of steel leaving the scabbard shockingly loud in the silence. He doesn't say a word to you. He just keeps watching. This is the grim reality of trade. Historians still argue whether merchants traveled in large, well-defended caravans out of necessity, or if this image is an exaggeration, with most trade being conducted by smaller, more discreet groups trying to avoid attention. As you sit on this cart, a painfully obvious target, you think that the historians who favor the big caravan theory probably have the right of it. A lone cart like yours is not discreet. It's an invitation. Late in the afternoon, it happens. Little John, scouting ahead, suddenly stops and holds up a fist. The signal is unmistakable. Trouble. Giles melts into the trees on the left side of the road. He gestures for you to stop the cart. You pull the horses to a halt, your hands slick with sweat on the reins. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs. From up ahead, you hear voices. A man shouts a challenge. You see 3 figures step out from behind a massive oak tree, blocking the road. They are dressed in rough homespun, but they carry wood axes and long, sharp pikes. They are classic, text. The forest finally spits you out as dusk bleeds across the sky. The oppressive canopy of leaves gives way to open fields, and the silence is replaced by the gentle evening sounds of crickets and distant sheep. Ahead, you see it. A squat, timber-framed building with a plume of smoke rising from a chimney in its sagging roof. Sticking out from the front wall is a long pole with a withered-looking bush tied to the end, the ale stake, a universal sign that promises shelter and drink. An inn. On any other day, the sight would bring a wave of profound relief. Tonight, after what you witnessed on the road, it just looks like another kind of trap. Giles grunts, a sound of acknowledgement. We stop here. It's not a question. You pull the cart into a muddy, manure-strewn yard behind the building. The air is thick with the smell of animals and wood smoke. A stooped stable boy with straw in his hair emerges from a dark barn to take charge of your horses. You give him specific instructions about feeding and watering them, trying to sound authoritative, but your voice is thin and strained. You watch him lead the animals away, your most valuable assets besides the barrels themselves, into the care of a complete stranger. Giles, meanwhile, is supervising the cart. Best if it stays hitched, he says. Harder to move quiet-like. He drapes a filthy canvas sheet over the barrels, a pathetic attempt at concealment. It does nothing to hide their shape or number. The cart is a blatant advertisement of your merchant status. You walk from the yard into the inn's common room, and the world dissolves into a haze of smoke and noise. A large, open hearth dominates the center of the room, but its chimney doesn't draw properly, so a permanent cloud of gray, acrid smoke hangs in the air, stinging your eyes and catching in your throat. There is no non-smoking section in the 14th century. The whole world is the smoking section. The room is packed with people crowded around rough-hewn wooden tables on splintery benches. Farmers, a couple of friars in brown robes, a rough-looking group you guess are local laborers, all talking, shouting, and laughing over mugs of ale. The floor is packed earth, covered with a layer of rushes that might have been fresh a month ago, but are now a damp, trodden-down mat of filth and spilled food. It's less like flooring and more like a large-scale petri dish with a roof. The innkeeper approaches. He's a burly man with a stained apron stretched tight over a formidable belly. He wipes his greasy hands on his apron and gives you a swift, appraising look, his eyes flicking from your worn-out boots to the slightly better quality of your tunic, then to the 2 hulking, armed men who have followed you in. He can see you have some money, and he can see you have trouble. A profitable combination. Lodging for 3, he asks, his voice a gravelly rumble. Stabling for 2 horses? You nod, dreading the negotiation to come. Giles steps forward, his hand still resting on his sword pommel. And a private room, he says, his voice low and cold. The innkeeper almost laughs, but catches himself when he looks at Giles's face. Private rooms, master, are for dukes and bishops. And I have none of those staying tonight. I have a bed, or a spot on the floor by the fire, if your purse is light. This is a fundamental fact of medieval travel. The concept of a private room was a luxury almost beyond imagining for anyone but the highest nobility. Inns were built around the communal experience. You didn't rent a room, you rented a space. Giles knows this, of course. His demand was a power play, a way to establish that you are not common travelers to be trifled with. You pay for 3 places in a bed, plus stabling, plus a meal and ale for all of you. The price is, as always, extortionate. The innkeeper scoops up the coins and bellows at a serving girl to bring ale to your table. Giles and Little John choose a table in the corner, one that gives them a clear view of the door and the rest of the room. They sit with their backs to the wall. It's the instinct of men who always expect trouble. Other patrons glance over, take in their swords and their hard, quiet demeanor, and quickly look away, lowering their voices. Their presence creates a small bubble of silence and fear around your table. You are grateful for the buffer zone, but it also makes you feel like a zookeeper sitting down to dinner with his 2 most dangerous tigers. The serving girl brings 3 wooden mugs of dark, cloudy ale. It tastes sour, on the verge of turning to vinegar, but it's wet, and it takes the edge off the road's dust. She brings a wooden platter with a loaf of dark, heavy bread and a stew, or pottage, of indeterminate origin. You watch Giles and Little John tear off chunks of bread and scoop up the lumpy gravy with them, eating with a silent, wolfish hunger. You try to eat, but the memory of the afternoon's violence has stolen your appetite. The sight of the red-brown stew is too close to the color of blood on the forest floor. You push the food around on your plate, your stomach churning. Later, when it's time to sleep, the innkeeper leads you upstairs. He carries a single tallow candle that casts flickering, monstrous shadows on the walls. The sleeping chamber is a long, low-ceilinged room containing 4 large beds. Not 4 beds for 4 rooms. 4 beds, total. Each is a simple wooden frame with ropes stretched across it, supporting a lumpy mattress stuffed with straw and who knows what else. A single, coarse-wool blanket lies on top of each one. You 3 can take this one, the innkeeper says, pointing to a bed near the far wall. The mattress is visibly sunken in the middle and bears several large, dark stains of unknown vintage. This is your accommodation. The 3 of you, in one bed. You look at Giles. He just shrugs. For him, this is normal. Little John, without a word, lies down on the outermost edge of the bed, his massive frame taking up nearly half of it. He is asleep, or pretending to be, within seconds. Giles takes the middle spot. That leaves the space by the wall for you. You gingerly climb over Giles and lie down, the straw rustling beneath you. The mattress smells of stale sweat, damp, and something vaguely foul, like old cheese. The scratchy blanket barely covers you. You are lying inches away from the man who killed for you this afternoon. You can hear his steady breathing, smell the sour ale on his breath. This is an intimacy more terrifying than any threat. But the ordeal is not over. Soon, other guests begin to file in to claim their spots. A fat merchant and his son take the bed next to yours. The merchant begins to snore almost immediately, a sound like a saw cutting through wet timber. A coughing, wheezing man who smells of pigs and a quiet, praying pilgrim share another. Soon, the room is filled with the sounds of a dozen sleeping, wheezing, coughing, snoring strangers. The air grows thick and heavy. And then, you feel it. A tiny prickle on your ankle, then another on your arm. Fleas. The mattress is teeming with them. You try to lie still, to ignore it, but the itching is maddening. You are being eaten alive in slow motion. This is your reward for a hard day's travel. A lumpy, The first hint of dawn is a pale, gray smear in the grimy window slit. It's your signal to escape. You slide out of the lumpy, flea-infested bed, careful not to wake Giles, and creep down the stairs. The common room is a wreck. A few drunken souls are still slumped over tables, snoring in pools of spilled ale. The fire has died down to a pile of embers, and the air is cold and stale. You push open the heavy door and step out into the yard. The morning air is sharp and clean, a blessed relief after the suffocating fog of the inn. Your first thought, as always, is for your cargo. You hurry over to the cart. The horses are hitched, just as you left them. The canvas sheet is still draped over the barrels. Everything seems to be in order. The innkeeper's liability, it seems, was a sufficient deterrent. You give the horses a reassuring pat. Their warm, solid presence a small comfort in this miserable world. But now a new, more immediate problem asserts itself. Hunger. Your stomach, which rebelled against the pottage last night, is now rumbling with a desperate, hollow ache. You haven't had a proper meal in what feels like days. Giles and Little John emerge from the inn, stretching and yawning. Even they look slightly the worse for wear after a night in that bed. The innkeeper is already awake, rekindling the fire. For breakfast, he offers the dregs of last night's ale, called small beer, a weak and watery brew, and bread. Just bread. It's the same dense, dark loaf from last night, but now it's stale. He charges you for it, of course. You sit at a table, gnawing on the hard crust, trying to wash it down with the thin, sour beer. It's less a meal and more a punishment. This is the fuel for a long day of travel. Once you are back on the road, the gnawing hunger only intensifies. The meager breakfast burns off within an hour, leaving you feeling weak and lightheaded. You start to fantasize about food. Not lavish feasts, but simple things. A piece of fresh baked bread, warm from the oven. An apple, crisp and sweet. A slice of good, sharp cheese that isn't fuzzy around the edges. These simple pleasures are as far out of your reach as a king's banquet. This is the grim reality of the road. There are no convenience stores, no drive-thrus, no charming little cafes. Your diet is dictated by what is portable and what won't spoil. For a merchant like you, this means a relentless, soul-crushing monotony of preserved foods. The foundation of your diet is bread, heavy, coarse, and after a few days, hard enough to be used as a weapon. With it, you might have a piece of salted meat, usually pork or beef, cured to a leathery toughness that requires serious commitment to chew. Or perhaps some hard, dry cheese, its flavor growing stronger and more pungent with each passing day. To wash it down, you have your water skin. But you learn quickly never to fill it with just water. Water from streams or wells is a lottery of disease. A single mouthful of the wrong water could lead to days of debilitating sickness, the bloody flux, or dysentery, a common and often fatal ailment. So you drink what everyone drinks, ale or small beer. The brewing process kills most of the harmful bacteria, making it a safer option than water. It's one of the great ironies of the medieval world that it was often healthier to be slightly drunk all day than to be sober and hydrated. Around midday, Giles calls a halt. You pull the cart over to the side of the track, near a small, clear-running stream. This is lunchtime. You pull out your provisions, the stale bread, the salty meat, the hard cheese. You sit on a fallen log and begin your grim ritual. You saw off a piece of meat with your dagger, the salt stinging the small cuts on your hands. You hack off a hunk of bread. As you chew the tough, flavorless food, you see Giles do something interesting. He takes a piece of his own hard bread and, instead of eating it, tosses it onto the ground. It's not an offering to the gods of the road. It's a quirky but common practice rooted in the dining etiquette of the nobility. In a great lord's hall, thick slices of stale bread, called trenchers, were used as plates to soak up the juices from the meat. At the end of the meal, these gravy-soaked trenchers were not eaten by the high-born diners, but were given as charity to the poor waiting at the gates. Giles, in his own rough way, is mimicking this high-status behavior, demonstrating that he is too good to eat his own plate. You, on the other hand, are so hungry you'd gladly eat his discarded, dirt-covered trencher. As you eat, a new temptation arises. The woods are full of life. You see a fat rabbit dart across the path. You hear the call of a pheasant from a nearby thicket. The stream is likely full of fish. Here is fresh food, free for the taking. Except it isn't. This is a fundamental and often brutally enforced fact of medieval society. The hunting rights in this forest belong to the local lord. The deer, the boar, the rabbits, even the birds, are his personal property. To be caught poaching, taking so much as a single rabbit for your pot, is a serious crime. The penalties were savage, ranging from a hefty fine for a first offense to mutilation, like having a hand chopped off, or even hanging for repeat offenders. The forest is a larder, but it's locked, and the Lord holds the only key. So you are surrounded by potential food that you dare not touch. It's a special kind of torture. You sit there, chewing your salty, leathery beef, while a plump, delicious-looking pheasant struts by, practically mocking you with its lordly immunity. Later that afternoon, you pass a small, miserable-looking village. A woman has set up a small stand by the side of the road, selling a few wizened-looking vegetables and some freshly baked meat pies. The smell is intoxicating. It's the scent of hot pastry, of cooked onions and meat, of real, fresh food. You pull the cart to a halt, your mouth watering. You have a few small coins left, enough for a pie for each of you. It feels like an unimaginable luxury. You buy 3. They are still warm. You hand one to Giles, and one to Little John. You take a huge bite of yours. The pastry is greasy, the contents a hot, savory mush. It is the most delicious thing you have ever tasted. You are so focused on your pie that you don't notice the strange look Giles gives his. He sniffs it suspiciously. He pokes it with his dagger. Then he takes a small, hesitant bite. He chews slowly, his expression unreadable. Then he spits it out. What's wrong? You ask, your mouth full of savory goodness. This ain't mutton, he says, his voice grim. He prods the filling again with his knife. Could be anything. Cat. Dog. Rat maybe. You stop chewing. Your stomach clenches. The delicious pie suddenly tastes of ash and fear. Roadside food vendors were notorious for their creative use of ingredients. A meat pie was a perfect way to disguise the origin of the meat. Was it a sick animal the farmer couldn't sell? Was it roadkill? Was it, as Giles suggests, someone's missing pet? There were regulations, of course. Town guilds tried to inspect butchers and bakers, but out here, on the road, there was no oversight. It was a culinary you were getting closer to home. The landscape is becoming familiar, the shape of the hills, the type of stone used in the farm walls. You can feel the pull of your destination, a faint glimmer of hope at the end of this long, dark tunnel. But as you get closer to the heartlands of your own kingdom, the natural obstacles of mud and forest are replaced by a new, more insidious kind of barrier. Human greed, codified as law. You are about to enter the land of 1,000 tolls. The first one appears as you approach a sturdy-looking stone bridge crossing a wide, fast-flowing river. A small, fortified tower stands at one end of the bridge, and a heavy chain is stretched across the entrance. A man in a dirty tunic, bearing the crest of some local lord you've never heard of, steps out. He carries a pike, which he plants firmly in the middle of the road. "Halt!" he calls out, with the practiced authority of a man who enjoys his small measure of power. "Bridge toll." You sigh. You knew this was coming. Giles looks on, utterly indifferent. This is your problem, the merchant's problem. His job is violence, not commerce. You bring the cart to a stop and ask the man the fee. He looks your cart over, his eyes lingering on the 8 barrels. His gaze is that of a butcher estimating the weight of a hog. "For the cart, 2 pence, he says. "For the horses, a penny each. "For the man driving," he points at you, "a penny. "For your 2 guards, a penny each. "And for the cargo, let's see, 8 barrels, we'll call it a penny a barrel." You do the quick, painful calculation in your head. The total is outrageous, a sum of money that could feed a peasant family for a week. "That's robbery," you protest. "The King's Road is supposed to be free." The man laughs, a short, barking sound. "This ain't the King's Road, merchant. This is the Baron de Valois' bridge. He built it with his own stone and his own men. You want to use his bridge, you pay his price. Or you can try your luck swimming." He gestures at the fast, churning water below. He's right, and you know it. This is a foundational aspect of medieval economics. Infrastructure was not a public good provided by a central government. Roads, bridges, and ferries were often built and maintained by local landowners, monasteries, towns, or feudal lords, who then saw it as their absolute right to charge whatever they could get away with for its use. It was a private enterprise, and you are the customer with no other options. With a grimace, you fish out your coin pouch. It's nearly empty now, a sad, flaccid leather sack. You carefully count out the pennies into the man's waiting hand. He recounts them, slowly, making you wait. Finally, satisfied, he gives a signal, and another man in the tower begins to turn a winch, lowering the chain. You are permitted to cross. As the cart rumbles over the stone bridge, the clatter of the horses' hooves and the turning of the wheels sounds like the clinking of your own coins, disappearing into the Baron's coffers. This is just the beginning. A few hours later, you approach the gates of a walled town. You have no intention of stopping here. You just need to pass through it to get to the road on the other side. But the town has other ideas. At the gate, You are stopped again. Another guard, another demand for money. This is the town toll, a standard practice. You have to pay a fee simply for entering the town's jurisdiction. But it gets worse. The guard informs you that there is also a tax on all goods brought into the town for sale. But I'm not selling them here. You explain, for what feels like the 100th time on this journey. I'm just passing through. The guard shrugs, a gesture of bureaucratic indifference you have come to despise. Don't matter. It's on a cart, on our road, inside our walls. It's subject to the pavage. He's using the official term for the toll, which was theoretically levied to pay for the paving and maintenance of the town's streets. You look past him at a street that is little more than a sea of mud and refuse. The paving funds seem to have been diverted elsewhere. You argue, you plead. You show him your now battered safe conduct pass from the king's sheriff. He is unimpressed. The town's authority, within its own walls, is absolute. The king is far away, but the town council is right here. And then comes the most frustrating part. He tells you the tax on your cloth is to be paid in kind. They don't want your money. They want your cloth. He explains that the toll is 1 yard of cloth from 1 barrel of your choice. It's a quirky but insidious form of taxation. It allows the town authorities to acquire valuable goods for free, which they can then sell themselves. It also forces you to unseal one of your precious, carefully packed barrels right here in the street. Under the watchful eyes of the guards and a growing crowd of curious onlookers, you have to pry the lid off one of the barrels. The stench of the goatee straw you used for packing wafts out. You pull out the oilcloth-wrapped bolt, untie the cords, and unroll the beautiful green cloth you bought in Bruges. The crowd murmurs in appreciation. You have just revealed the quality of your wares to every potential thief and rival merchant in this town. The town's official weaver is summoned. He arrives with a measuring stick and a pair of shears. He carefully measures out 1 yard from the end of the bolt and, with a swift, brutal snap, cuts it off. The sound of the shears cutting through your investment is physically painful. He hands you back the now shortened bolt and walks away with his prize. You have to repack the whole thing, your cheeks burning with humiliation and rage. Only then are you allowed to proceed through the town, your wallet lighter, and one of your prize pieces of merchandise permanently damaged. Historians still argue about the economic effect of this patchwork of endless, arbitrary tolls. Did they cripple long-distance trade, acting as a massive brake on economic development? Or were they a necessary evil, the only way to fund the infrastructure and protection that made trade possible in the first place, however imperfectly? As you leave the town, having paid for the privilege of being legally robbed, you are firmly in the crippling camp. You feel like you're being eaten alive by 1,000 tiny bites. The journey continues, a monotonous sequence of road and robbery. You pay a toll to a monastery for the use of a road that runs through their lands. You pay a toll to a ferryman to cross a river too deep to ford, his price doubling as soon as he sees your cargo. You even have to pay a dust toll in one village, a ludicrous tax justified on the grounds that your cart is kicking up the Lord's personal dust from his personal road. Every bridge, every town, every petty lord laying with a half-rotten tower and 3 men-at-arms sees you as a source of revenue. The system is a bewildering mess. The tolls are not standardized. There's no price list, no easy pass lane. The rate is determined on the spot. based on how wealthy you look and how much the toll collector thinks he can get. It is negotiation by extortion. There's a specific toll for crossing a bridge, pontage asterisk, for using a market, stallage for having your goods weighed on the official scales, tronage and for passing through a gate, portage Your entire journey is a litany of paying ages. By the time you are a day's journey from your hometown, your coin pouch, you finally see it. The familiar smudge on the horizon, the single spire of the main church reaching for the sky. Your hometown. A wave of exhaustion so profound it feels like a physical illness washes over you. You are home. The journey is over. But as you guide the weary horses through the last few miles of countryside, the relief is mingled with a cold, hard knot of anxiety. The road may be behind you, but a whole new set of trials is waiting within those familiar walls. You reach the town gate. The guards recognize you. "Welcome back, young master," one of them says with a grin. "Had a profitable trip, I see." He gestures at the card, at the barrels that announce your new status. The greeting is friendly, but the subtext is clear. You are no longer an invisible apprentice. You are a man of substance now, a player in the town's economy. And that means you have new responsibilities, new vulnerabilities, and new enemies. The first thing you do is take the cart not to your own rented room, but to the small warehouse space you arranged to lease before you left. It's little more than a secure shed, but it's yours for the next 6 months. Giles and Little John help you unload the barrels. Their job is done. You count out the last of the silver you had hidden away for their final payment. It's a hefty sum, but they earned it. You would not be here without them. Giles takes the coins without a word of thanks. He just nods. "If you need us again," he says, "you know where to find us." Then he and Little John turn and walk away, melting back into the grubby underbelly of society from which they came. You are glad to see them go. Their presence was a constant, terrifying reminder of the violence that underpins your entire world. Now, you are alone with your barrels. The moment of truth. With a crowbar and a hammer, you begin to pry open the lids. Your heart pounds with each screech of protesting wood. The first barrel opens. The smell of the goaty straw hits you, but underneath it, the oilcloth-wrapped bowl looks fine. You unwrap it. The green cloth is pristine. No mildew, no water damage, no stains. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. One by one, you open them all. 8 barrels. The 2 barrels of expensive blue cloth are still rotting in a ditch in Flanders, a permanent loss. 1 bolt of the green is a yard short, thanks to the town toll. And the barrel that took a dunk in the river? The cooper's work held. The cloth is miraculously dry. You have done it. You have successfully transported a valuable cargo across half of Europe. It is a moment of triumph, but it is short-lived. The cloth is not money. It is potential money. And between you and that potential stands a labyrinth of local laws, guild politics, and personal rivalries. Your first problem arrives the very next day. A man named Thomas, another cloth merchant in the town, one of Ulrich's main rivals, comes to visit you. He is all smiles and false bonhomie. He congratulates you on your safe return. He asks to see your wares. You cautiously show him a bolt of the gray cloth. He examines it, his eyes sharp and critical. "This is good cloth," he says, his smile tightening. "Very fine. A bit too fine, perhaps. The Drapers Guild has very specific regulations about the quality of cloth that can be sold in this town. To protect our customers, you understand. I'm not sure this particular weave meets our exacting local standards. It's a threat, veiled in the language of consumer protection. He is telling you that the guild, of which he is a senior member, can simply declare your cloth illegal to sell. It's a classic protectionist racket. He's not worried about the customers. He's worried about a new competitor with a superior product. 2 days later, you receive an official summons. You are to present yourself before a tribunal of the Drapers Guild to answer a formal complaint. The charge? That you attempted to circumvent guild authority by sourcing your goods directly, rather than working through established channels. The complainant? Thomas, of course. You stand before the same committee of old, sour-faced men who refused you a loan all those months ago. Thomas presents his case. He claims you are undermining the stability of the local market. He hints that your cloth might be of shoddy foreign make, its bright colors hiding a poor weave that will fall apart after one washing. He paints you as a reckless upstart, a danger to the good order of their trade. You try to defend yourself. You talk about your long apprenticeship, your knowledge of the trade. You argue that new products and healthy competition are good for everyone. They listen, their faces impassive. You realize with a sickening certainty that this is not a court of law. It is a kangaroo court. The verdict was decided before you even walked in the room. They fine you. The sum is substantial, a punitive tax for your impertinence. But they don't forbid you from selling your cloth. They can't, not without looking completely corrupt. Instead, they hamstring you. You must pay the fine before you can sell a single yard. It's another delay, another drain on your non-existent cash reserves. This is the reality of the medieval legal system. For a merchant, the law is not a shield. It is a weapon, and your rivals have more experience wielding it. A mainstream historical fact is that commercial law was a chaotic patchwork of local custom, royal decree, and guild regulation. A merchant operating in 3 different towns might be subject to 3 completely different sets of rules. There was no single, unified commercial code. This complexity created endless opportunities for litigation, disputes, and what amounted to legal harassment. And what if you are the one who is wronged? Imagine this. A local artisan, a wealthy dyer, agrees to buy 2 bolts of your gray cloth on credit. He promises to pay you in a month. A month passes. He doesn't pay. You go to his workshop to collect. He claims the cloth was not of the quality you promised and refuses to pay. He is lying. You have been cheated. What are your options? You can try to sue him. But this means entering a legal system that is slow, expensive, and biased. The dyer is a long-standing member of his own powerful guild. He has connections. He has friends on the town council. You are still the new guy, the outsider. To bring a lawsuit, you need to hire a clerk to draw up the complaint. You need to pay court fees. The proceedings could drag on for months, even years. All the while, you are without your money, and Isaac's interest clock is ticking. This is where you might encounter a quirky and rather desperate legal option: the trial by combat. While it was becoming rarer in commercial disputes by this period, the idea that a legal disagreement could be settled by a formal, sanctioned fight still existed in some places. You, as the plaintiff, could challenge the dyer to a duel to prove the truth of your claim. The theory was that God would grant victory to the man who was in the right. Of course, this system heavily favored the man who was better with a sword, not the man with the better case. As a merchant, you spent your life learning about wool, not swordplay. The dyer, however, might be a member of the town militia. Challenging him would be suicide. So justice is out of reach. Historians still argue about the effectiveness of medieval legal systems in resolving commercial disputes. Some point to the development of specialized. The fine from the Drapers Guild is a bitter pill to swallow. It drains the last of your emergency funds and forces you to sell a bolt of your gray cloth at a steep discount to a fellow merchant, not Thomas, but one of his cronies, just to raise the cash. The transaction feels like a surrender. You have survived the perils of the road only to be bled dry by the politics of your own hometown. But paying the fine, however galling, means you are finally, officially, allowed to trade. You set up a stall in the town's main marketplace. It's little more than a wooden table with a small awning, rented from the town council for a daily fee. Here, under the shadow of the church spire, surrounded by the shouts of fishmongers and the smell of baking bread, you will attempt to turn your beautiful, expensive cloth into a pile of silver coins. You unroll a bolt of the vibrant green cloth, draping it over your table. The color is magnificent, a deep, rich hue that catches the eye. It's a testament to the skill of the Flemish dyers, and it's unlike anything else in the market. People stop to look. Housewives, tailors, even the wives of wealthy artisans. They touch the fabric, their fingers testing the weave. They murmur about the quality, the softness, the lightness. You can see the desire in their eyes. This is what you dreamed of. Then, the problems begin. A woman asks the price for enough cloth to make a new tunic. You quote her a figure, a fair price that reflects your costs and allows for a modest profit. She gasps, clutching the purse at her belt as if you tried to snatch it. For that price, I could buy 2 tunics worth of Master Ulrich's wool, she exclaims, before stalking off. Another man, a tailor, examines the cloth with a professional eye. It's fine work, he admits. But it's foreign. Who knows if it will last? Our local cloth, we know it's sturdy. This is a gamble. He too walks away. You realize you are not just fighting against other merchants. You are fighting against habit, against tradition, against the deep-seated suspicion of anything new and different. Your customers are used to the heavy, sturdy, and familiar woolens produced locally. Your lighter, more fashionable cloth is an unknown quantity. It is a luxury, and people are wary of luxury. But your biggest problem is not the customers. It's the competition. And in a medieval town, competition is not a free-for-all. It is a carefully and brutally managed affair, controlled by the local merchant guild. In your case, the Drapers Guild. And the guild is a mafia. Their official purpose, the one they proclaim in their charter, is to uphold quality, ensure fair prices, and protect the consumer. This is a noble-sounding fiction. Their real purpose is to protect the profits of their existing members by crushing any and all outside competition. You are that outside competition. On your 3rd day in the market, 2 men from the guild pay you a visit. They are not senior members like Thomas, but enforcers, the muscle of the organization. They don't threaten you directly. They are more subtle than that. Fine-looking cloth, one of them says, picking up a corner of your green fabric. A shame no one seems to be buying it. Perhaps your prices are wrong, the other suggests. The guild recommends a price for cloth of this type. A much lower price. To ensure fairness for the good people of this town, of course. The price they recommend is so low it's barely above what you paid for the cloth in Bruges. If you sold at that price, after factoring in your transport costs, the tolls, the fines, and the interest on your loan, you would suffer a catastrophic loss. This is price fixing, pure and simple. It's a classic cartel tactic. By forcing you to sell at a ruinously low price, they can achieve two things. First, they prevent you from establishing a foothold in the market with your superior product. Second, they can buy up your stock themselves at a bargain price and then resell it for a handsome profit. Either way, you lose and they win. You try to argue, "I can't sell it for that. I'll be ruined." The first man smiles, a cold, empty gesture. "Being a merchant is a risky business," he says. "Perhaps you're not cut out for it. It would be a shame if other misfortunes were to befall your business. Accidents happen. A fire in a warehouse. A cart with a broken axle. The threat is no longer veiled. It is laid bare. Comply, or be destroyed." This is a fundamental fact of the medieval urban economy. The guilds were not the benign associations of craftsmen we sometimes imagine. They were powerful, monopolistic cartels that used their collective power to stifle innovation and eliminate competition. They controlled who could trade, what they could sell, where they could sell it, and at what price. To operate outside the guild's favor was to invite ruin. You are trapped. If you refuse, you risk not just financial failure, but physical danger. If you comply, you guarantee your own bankruptcy. Your beautiful cloth, the object of your long and perilous journey, has become an albatross around your neck. Desperate, you look for a way around the guild's stranglehold. You can't sell directly to the public in the market. They control that space. So, you try to sell wholesale to the town's tailors and seamstresses, visiting them in their workshops. Maybe you can cut a private deal, away from the prying eyes of the guild. The first tailor you visit is interested. He loves the cloth. But when you discuss a deal, he becomes nervous. "I can't," he says, his voice a whisper. "If the Drapers Guild hears I'm buying from you directly, they'll cut off my supply of local wool. They'll ruin me." The guild's power extends beyond its own members. It can exert pressure all along the supply chain. They have the town's entire textile industry in a chokehold. You start to see the tendrils of the guild everywhere. They are a shadow government, their power woven into the very fabric of the town's economy. Your old master, Ulrich, was part of it. Your rival, Thomas, is a leader in it. They are not just competitors. They are a unified front whose primary purpose is to make sure men like you fail. This is where a quirky and often misunderstood aspect of guild power comes into play: the control of information. The guild doesn't just fix prices, it controls knowledge. The best suppliers, the most reliable transport routes, the shifting tastes of wealthy customers. This is all privileged information, shared only among trusted members. Historians still argue whether the guild's strict control over apprenticeships was about training skilled labor or about creating a closed loop of information, a kind of trade secret society that was almost impossible for an outsider to penetrate. By going it alone, you have cut yourself off from this vital flow of information, and now you are paying the price. You brought back what you thought was a fashionable new cloth, but you had no way of knowing that the guild had already decided to crush any attempt to introduce it. Your situation becomes desperate. Isaac's loan is a ticking bomb. The first repayment is due in a few months, and you have sold almost nothing. The cloth sits in your warehouse, a beautiful, useless pile of debt. You lie awake at night, the numbers swirling in your head. The cost of the cloth, the transport, the tolls, the fines, the guards, the interest. You're hemorrhaging money you don't have. Your new product is being strangled by the guild, and the deadline for your first payment to Isaac is creeping closer like a shadow at noon. Your beautiful cloth is an asset, but it's an illiquid one. You can't pay Isaac in yards of green wool. He deals in one thing, silver, and you need to get some, fast. The few sales you have made have left you with a new and deeply frustrating problem. You look into your small, worn leather pouch. It contains a motley collection of coins. There are a few familiar silver pennies from your own kingdom, stamped with the king's face. But there are also some smaller, thinner coins from a neighboring duchy, a couple of heavy, crudely struck coins from a free city to the north, and a single, handsome-looking gold coin left over from a rare, desperate sale to a passing nobleman's agent. Your pouch is a mess of different shapes, sizes, weights, and values. Welcome to the nightmare of medieval currency. There is no single, unified monetary system. This is a core, maddening fact of medieval economic life. Every major kingdom, every powerful duke, every independent city-state, and sometimes even individual bishops or barons, claim the right to mint their own coins. The result was a bewildering chaos of currencies. A silver penny from England was not the same as a denier from France or a pfennig from the German lands, even if they were all theoretically based on the old Roman system. They had different weights and, more importantly, different silver content. This is your next hurdle. A customer wants to buy a length of cloth. She offers you a handful of coins. Are they what they appear to be? You have to become a miniature metallurgist on the spot. You pick up a coin. You feel its weight in your palm. You check its color. Is it the right shade of silver, or does it have a dull, leaden look? You bite it. This isn't just a movie cliché. A coin with a high silver or gold content is softer than a debased one filled with cheaper metals like copper or tin, and it would show the tooth marks. You flick it with your fingernail and listen to the ring. A pure silver coin has a clear, high-pitched tone. A debased coin makes a dull thud. Your market stall is a tiny, impromptu laboratory of numismatic analysis. And then there's the clipping. Coin clipping was the bane of every merchant's existence. It was the practice of shaving tiny slivers of metal from the edge of a coin. One clipped coin was barely noticeable, but a clipper could gather shavings from 100 coins and melt them down to make new ones, effectively creating money out of thin air. To combat this, some mints began to issue coins with milled edges or complex designs that went right to the rim, making any clipping obvious. But most coins were simply hammered, irregular discs, perfect targets for this subtle form of theft. You scrutinize every coin you're offered, running your thumb along the edge, feeling for the telltale unevenness that means you're being cheated. Worse than clipping was counterfeiting. A skilled forger could create a copper or lead slug and plate it with a thin layer of silver. It would look right, it might even feel right, but it was essentially worthless. Getting caught with a counterfeit coin in your possession was a double disaster. Not only were you out the value of the coin, but you could be accused of being the counterfeiter yourself, a crime that was often punished by boiling in oil or some other spectacular and unpleasant form of execution. Every transaction is a risk. Every coin is a potential disaster. To deal with this chaos, you have no choice. You must go to a money changer. You find his stall in a corner of the marketplace. It's not much more than a sturdy table, a chair, and a set of very precise-looking scales. The money changer, a man named Lorenzo, is an Italian from Lombardy. Many of the professional financiers and bankers of the era were Italians, who were at the forefront of commercial innovation. Lorenzo sits behind his table, his banco, the Italian word for bench from which we get our modern word bank, and watches the world with sharp, intelligent eyes. You approach him with your pouch of mixed coins. You need to consolidate them, to exchange this jumble of foreign and domestic currency for a single, reliable type of silver coin that Isaac will accept. Lorenzo greets you with a thin, professional smile. You dump your coins on his bench. He goes to work with the detached precision of a surgeon. He sorts them into little piles by type. He weighs each pile on his delicate balance scales. He examines a few individual coins with a touchstone, a small tablet of black slate. This is a quirky but effective bit of medieval technology. He rubs the coin on the stone, leaving a metallic streak. Then he rubs a needle of known gold or silver purity next to it. By comparing the color and texture of the two streaks, he can determine the fineness of the metal in the coin with remarkable accuracy. He makes a series of rapid calculations, either in his head or by scribbling on a wax tablet. He is calculating the intrinsic value of your money, the actual worth of the silver and gold you've given him, stripped of its confusing royal faces and ducal crests. Then he tells you what he will give you for it in the local currency. The amount is disappointingly low. You have just been introduced to the money changer's commission. He is not providing this service for free. He takes a significant percentage for his expertise, for his risk, and for the convenience he provides. You protest, but you have no leverage. He is the only game in town. Trying to pass off these strange coins yourself would be a nightmare. You agree, and he counts out a neat stack of local silver pennies, sweeping your more varied and valuable collection into his own coffers. He has made a tidy profit simply by sitting at his bench while you have been risking your life on the road. It is perhaps the most galling transaction of your entire journey. Historians still argue about the role of these early bankers and money changers. Were they parasitic figures, profiting from the inefficiencies of the monetary system and exploiting merchants in need? Or were they essential facilitators of trade, providing a vital service that helped to grease the wheels of a complex and fragmented international economy? As you walk away from Lorenzo's bench, your pouch lighter than it should be, you lean towards the parasite theory. But you also know that without him, your jumble of coins would be almost useless. He is a necessary evil. Now you have a pile of silver, but it's still not enough. Not nearly enough. You need to sell more cloth, but the guild has made that impossible. You are stuck. In desperation, you think of a new strategy. If you can't sell your cloth in your hometown, maybe you can sell it somewhere else. There is a large trade fair held every year in a town a week's journey to the south. Fairs were special events where the normal rules of trade, including the monopolies of local guilds, were often suspended. It was an open market, a neutral ground. This is your last, best hope. You decide to risk it. You pack up half of your remaining cloth, leaving the rest in your warehouse. You can't afford guards this time. You buy a single pack horse, load it up yourself, and prepare to set out alone. You are becoming a merchant again, but this time you are not a hopeful novice. You are a desperate man, fleeing the predatory politics of your own home in search of a market that might, just might, be fair. The night before the journey to the trade fair is a week of quiet, gnawing terror. Every mile you put between yourself and your hometown is a mile further from the dubious safety of familiar territory. Traveling alone is a fool's errand, and you know it. Your single pack horse, laden with 2 carefully wrapped bolts of your finest cloth, is a beacon for every footpad and opportunist. You don't sleep in inns this time. You can't afford them, and you don't dare leave your horse and goods in a public stable. Instead, you sleep in ditches a few dozen yards off the road, with the horse's tether tied around your wrist. You lie on the cold ground, clutching a small knife, starting at every sound. Sleep is a series of short, fretful naps, from which you wake with a jolt of panic. Your diet consists of the dregs of your provisions, the last of the hard cheese, now sweating and pungent, and bread so stale you have to soak it in a stream to make it edible. The questionable water you use gives you a sour, unsettled stomach. You feel a constant, low-grade misery, a combination of fear, hunger, and exhaustion. One afternoon, while readjusting the load on your pack horse, the animal spooks at a snake slithering through the grass. It rears up, and you stumble backward to avoid its flailing hooves, falling hard onto the rocky ground. A sharp, searing pain shoots through your left forearm. You cry out, clutching it. When you pull your sleeve back, you see a long, ragged gash, already welling up with blood. It's not deep enough to be life-threatening, but it's open, it's dirty, and you are in the middle of nowhere. You do what you can. You tear a strip of cloth from the bottom of your tunic, a garment that hasn't been properly washed in weeks, and bind the wound tightly to stanch the bleeding. The pain is intense, a throbbing, angry pulse that radiates up your arm. You manage to calm the horse, reload the pack, and continue on your way, but now every step is agony. Your arm feels like it's on fire. By evening, the wound is looking worse. The skin around the gash is red and swollen. It's hot to the touch. You know, with a sinking feeling of dread, what's happening. The cut is infected. In your modern world, this would be a minor inconvenience. A trip to an urgent care clinic, an antibiotic prescription, a tetanus shot. In the medieval world, a simple infected cut can be a death sentence. The next day, you limp into a small village, half delirious with pain and fever. Your arm is a swollen, purple log. You need help. You ask a villager where you can find a physician. The villager looks at your merchant's attire, then at your injury, and directs you not to a physician, but to the local barber surgeon. This is a crucial distinction and a mainstream fact of medieval life. University-trained physicians were for the wealthy elite. They diagnosed illnesses by examining urine and consulting astrological charts, and they rarely, if ever, performed surgery, which was seen as a messy, manual craft beneath their dignity. For the common person, medical care, from pulling a tooth to setting a bone to amputating a limb, was the domain of the barber-surgeon. These were craftsmen who cut hair, shaved beards, and, because they owned sharp razors and were skilled with their hands, also performed a wide range of medical procedures. You find his shop, marked by the iconic red and white striped pole. The red represents blood, the white represents bandages. It's a literal signpost for the bloody business conducted within. The barber-surgeon is a stout, cheerful man with bloodstains on his apron. He takes one look at your arm and whistles. "That's a nasty one," he says, with an unnerving professional enthusiasm. The humors are out of balance. Too much hot, angry blood collecting in the limb. We'll need to let it out. A good bleeding will set you right. Bloodletting. The universal panacea for almost every ailment, from headaches to the plague. The theory, based on the ancient Greek idea of the four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, was that illness was caused by an imbalance of these fluids. By draining the excess humor, usually blood, balance could be restored. It was a medical theory that was elegant, comprehensive, and almost entirely wrong. In your case, it's the worst possible thing he could do. You are already fighting an infection. Losing blood will only weaken your body's ability to defend itself. You try to protest, but you're weak with fever, and he's confident. Before you can argue, he's tying a leather strap tightly around your upper arm. He pulls out a fleam, a small, sharp instrument that looks like a miniature chisel. He doesn't wash his hands. He doesn't sterilize the instrument. He simply wipes it on his already dirty apron. He presses the fleam against a vein on the inside of your elbow and gives it a sharp tap with his finger. A dark stream of blood spurts into a wooden bowl. You feel dizzy, lightheaded. The world starts to spin. He watches the blood flow, nodding sagely. "See? It's dark and thick. Bad blood. We need to get it out." He lets a terrifying amount of your blood drain into the bowl before he finally bandages the new cut, again, with a piece of unwashed linen. Then he turns his attention to the original wound. "Now for the poison," he says. He takes a small iron rod and places it in the embers of his shop's fire until the tip glows red-hot. Cauterization. The theory was that the intense heat would burn away the poison of the infection and seal the wound. It was also excruciatingly painful and caused massive tissue damage, creating a perfect environment for anaerobic bacteria like tetanus to thrive. The smell of your own searing flesh fills the air. The pain is a white-hot explosion that almost makes you pass out. When it's over, you are left with a charred, blackened wound, a bleeding arm, and a significant fee to pay for the privilege of being tortured. The barber-surgeon pats you on the back. "You'll be right as rain in a few days," he says cheerfully. You stumble out of his shop, weaker and in more pain than when you entered. You find a room at the local inn. You're too sick to sleep in a ditch now, and collapse onto the bed. The fever worsens. You drift in and out of a delirious nightmare. You see Isaac's face, laughing at you. You see the Drapers' Guild enforcers, their faces twisting. You see the waves of the sea crashing over you. This is where a quirky and frankly terrifying fringe medical belief might come into play. If the barber-surgeon's treatment failed, a desperate patient might turn to folk remedies. One popular treatment for infected wounds, mentioned in several historical texts, was a plaster made of animal dung, often crocodile, if you could get it, but sheep or pigeon would do in a pinch, mixed with honey and other herbs. The antibacterial properties of honey are now well known, but mixing it with a poultice of raw manure was a surefire recipe for introducing a host of new and exciting pathogens, including tetanus, into an open wound. You are lucky the barber surgeon didn't subscribe to this particular school of thought. Or maybe you're unlucky. It's hard to say which treatment is worse. Historians still argue about the overall effectiveness of medieval medicine. Was it all just butchery and superstition, actively harming weak, scarred, and poorer than when you set out? You finally arrive at the town hosting the great annual fair. The normal, sleepy market town has been transformed into a sprawling, chaotic city of tents, stalls, and people. The sheer volume of noise and activity is overwhelming after the quiet terror of your solo journey. This is one of the great commercial events of the year, a temporary suspension of the normal, rigid rules of trade. For a few weeks, merchants from all over the kingdom, and even from foreign lands, can trade freely under the protection of the fair's charter, granted by the king himself. This is your last chance. You find a patch of ground to set up your small stall, paying the fair's marshal a fee for the privilege. You unroll your bolts of green and gray cloth, the colors looking shockingly vibrant in the bright sunlight. Your stall is small and pathetic compared to the grand tents of the wealthy wool merchants or the elaborate displays of the armorers and goldsmiths, but it's yours. The fair is a swirling microcosm of the entire medieval world. You see English merchants haggling with French wine sellers, Flemish weavers arguing with Italian bankers, and local farmers gawking at it all. There are jugglers and minstrels, puppeteers and preachers, quack doctors selling miracle elixirs, and pickpockets working the crowds with silent, expert skill. The air is a thick soup of smells: roasting meat, livestock, sweat, perfume, mud, and money. For the first few days, business is slow. You are a nobody, an unknown quantity. People walk past your stall, their eyes drawn to bigger, more established displays. The despair you've held at bay for so long begins to creep back in. You've risked everything to get here, and it seems you're destined to fail. Then, a stroke of luck. A woman, richly dressed, stops at your stall. She is not a local. You can tell by the cut of her clothes and her accent. She is the wife of a visiting baron, someone with wealth and a taste for novelty. She feels the cloth, her eyes lighting up. She has never seen anything like it. She buys a whole bolt of the green, paying you in heavy silver coins without even haggling. It's like a dam has broken. Her purchase acts as a seal of approval. Other wealthy patrons, seeing the Baroness's interest, stop to look. A group of young knights, flush with tournament winnings, buy cloth for new tunics. The agent for a wealthy monastery buys your gray cloth for new habits for the senior monks. Suddenly, your dubious, foreign cloth is the height of fashion. The very thing that made it suspect in your hometown. Its novelty is what makes it desirable here. In 3 days, you sell everything. Every last yard. You stand before your empty table, a heavy pouch of coins at your belt, in a state of stunned disbelief. You have done it. After all the misery, the fear, the pain, and the endless, grinding anxiety, you have turned a profit. A real, substantial profit. You sit down on your stool, the noise of the fair fading to a distant hum. The relief is so intense it makes you dizzy. For the first time in months, the monstrous face of Isaac the moneylender doesn't loom in your imagination. You have enough to make your first payment. You have enough to live on. You have a future. But as the initial euphoria subsides, a new kind of anxiety begins to surface. A logistical, practical anxiety. You have succeeded in your immediate goal, but you are operating in a total information vacuum. You need to get a message back home. You need to let your landlord know you'll be keeping the warehouse space. More importantly, you need to find out what has been happening in your absence. Is your old master, Ulrich, still in business? Has your rival, Thomas, cooked up some new scheme to ruin you? Is there a sudden outbreak of plague in the region that might make the journey home a death trap? You have no way of knowing. This is a fundamental, mind-bending reality of the medieval world, the complete absence of instant communication. There are no telephones, no telegraphs, no postal service in the modern sense. News travels at the speed of the fastest horse or the slowest ship. A message from London to Rome could take a month or more, if it arrived at all. As a merchant, you are constantly making critical decisions based on information that is weeks or months out of date. You want to send a letter home. How do you do it? You have to find another merchant or a pilgrim who is heading back towards your town. You pay him a small fee to carry your letter. You are entrusting a vital piece of business communication to a complete stranger who has no real obligation to deliver it. He might lose it. He might be robbed. He might simply forget. There is no tracking number, no delivery confirmation. You send your message out into the world and simply pray it reaches its destination. And what about the information you need? You need to know the market price for wool in Bruges, but you are hundreds of miles and a sea away. The price could have crashed last month, and you wouldn't know until you'd already spent a fortune getting there. You might hear a rumor, whispered from one merchant to another, that the King of France is about to debase his currency, rendering all French coins less valuable. Is the rumor true? Who started it? Is it a genuine piece of intelligence, or is it misinformation deliberately spread by a rival to manipulate the market? This is where you see the immense value of the great merchant networks, like the Italian banking families or the Hanseatic League. A quirky but vital part of their success was their sophisticated private courier systems. The Medici Bank, for example, had riders crisscrossing Europe, carrying letters between their branches written in complex codes. They had created their own private, secure internet, running on horsepower. It gave them a massive advantage. They knew things weeks before anyone else. As an independent operator, you are information poor. You are navigating by rumor and guesswork. Historians still argue about how merchants managed this uncertainty. Did they rely on family connections, with brothers or cousins stationed in different cities? Did they form partnerships based on trust and reputation? Or was the whole system just a massive, chaotic gamble? From your perspective, it feels very much like the latter. You made a huge profit at this fair. But was it because of your skill, or because you got lucky? You happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right product, but you had no way of knowing that in advance. You can't build a sustainable business on blind luck. This lack of information has personal consequences too. You think about your family, your aging parents in their small village. Are they well? Your father could have died 6 months ago, and you would have no way of knowing. The personal and the professional are intertwined in this web of silence. Every journey is a step into the unknown, and every return is a lottery of what you will find. As you pack up your empty stall, the heavy coin pouch a solid, reassuring weight at your side, you realize that your success has not brought you peace of mind. It has only raised the stakes. Now you have something to lose, and you must risk it all over again, based on the same flimsy rumors and outdated information that governed your first trip. You have conquered the physical dangers of the world, but you are still a helpless victim of the tyranny of distance and the journey home from the fair is different. You are not the same desperate, fearful man who crept along this road a few weeks ago. You travel with a newfound confidence that borders on a swagger. You have money, real money. You don't sleep in ditches this time. You stay at inns, demanding the best room, which is still a shared, lumpy bed, but at least it's not on the floor. You buy a new tunic of fine, dark wool, and boots made of soft, supple leather. You eat the innkeeper's best food without asking the price, and complain loudly if the ale is sour. You have become a man of substance, and you are starting to act the part. You even hire a guard for the last 2 days of the journey, not out of real fear this time, but as a status symbol. You arrive at the gates of your hometown not on a tired pack horse, but riding a handsome new mare, the guard trotting behind you like an attendant. You are making a statement. You are no longer the frightened apprentice or the desperate novice. You are a success. Your arrival does not go unnoticed. People in the street stare. Old acquaintances greet you with a new, fawning respect. Your landlord, who had been threatening to lease your warehouse to someone else, is now all smiles and deference. You walk into the Draper's Guild Hall to pay the balance of your punitive fine, and you slap the coins down on the table with a satisfying thud. Thomas, your old rival, watches you, his face a mask of controlled fury. He sees you haven't been crushed. You have thrived. The look in his eyes is no longer one of contemptuous amusement. It's one of pure, venomous hatred. You have not defeated him. You have made him a permanent and powerful enemy. Your first order of business is Isaac. You go to his house on the quiet street, but this time you are not a trembling supplicant. You knock on the solid oak door with a firm, confident hand. You are shown into the same wood-paneled room. Isaac enters, his expression as unreadable as ever. You place a heavy leather bag on the table between you. The first payment, you say, your voice even with interest. He unties the bag and counts the silver, his fingers moving with their usual speed. He checks a few coins for weight and purity. He consults a ledger. Finally, he nods, a single, curt gesture of acknowledgement. He makes a notation in his book. The transaction is complete. You have met your obligation. You have stared into the abyss of debt bondage, and you have, for now, stepped back from the edge. As you leave his house, you feel a profound sense of liberation. You are still in his debt, but you are no longer his potential slave. You are a client. With your newfound wealth, you begin to build your life. You rent a small but respectable house for yourself, with actual furniture. You hire a servant, a young girl to cook and clean. You start to participate in the civic life of the town, making a conspicuous donation to the church for the repair of its roof. You are becoming a respected citizen, a burgher, a man of the town. But you quickly discover that your success has put you in a strange, and uncomfortable social position. You are caught between two worlds. To the common folk, the artisans, the laborers, the peasants, you are now one of the rich. They see your fine clothes and your comfortable house, and they resent you for it. They see you as a man who profits without laboring with his hands, a man who grows wealthy by moving things from one place to another. You are an object of envy and suspicion. But to the old guard, the true elite, you are still a nobody. This is the great, unbreachable wall of medieval society. You may have wealth, but you do not have blood. You are a commoner. The nobility, the landed aristocracy who derive their wealth and status from the acres they own, and the peasants who work it, look down on you with a mixture of disdain and contempt. One day, the local lord, the Baron de Valois, the same man whose exorbitant bridge toll you paid, rides through town with his retinue. He is a magnificent sight in his shining armor, his horse draped in fabrics bearing his coat of arms. He stops to speak with the mayor, and you happen to be standing nearby. He glances at you, at your fine new tunic and your confident posture. His eyes sweep over you, and the look he gives you is one of utter dismissal. It's the look a man gives an insect. In his world, a man who engages in the grubby business of buying and selling is fundamentally inferior. A lord's wealth comes from the land, a noble and ancient source. Your wealth comes from trade, a vulgar and modern invention. You are nouveau riche, and there is no greater insult. You have money, but you have no class. And it's not just the nobility. The church, the other great pillar of the medieval world, has a deeply ambivalent relationship with your profession. On the one hand, they are happy to take your donations. On the other, they preach sermons about the spiritual dangers of wealth and the sin of avarice. A common religious teaching, a fact of the era, was the saying of Saint Jerome, Asterisk homo mercator vix aenumquam potus Deo placere start. The merchant can please God only with difficulty, if at all. The very act of commerce, of buying low and selling high, was seen as morally suspect. You are not creating anything, merely exploiting price differences. The pursuit of profit for its own sake was considered a dangerous path, one that led the soul away from God. You sit in church, listening to a friar rail against the temptations of earthly riches, and you feel the eyes of the congregation on you. You are the living embodiment of the sin he is describing. The very skills that have allowed you to survive and prosper, your ambition, your willingness to take risks, your sharp eye for a deal, are framed as moral failings. This creates a strange psychological burden. A quirky but revealing trend among wealthy merchants of the period was their lavish spending on religious endowments in their wills. They would fund the building of chapels, pay for priests to say masses for their souls in perpetuity, and leave huge sums to monasteries. Historians still argue whether this was purely an expression of genuine piety, or a kind of spiritual panic buying, an attempt to use their earthly wealth to bribe their way into heaven and atone for a lifetime of morally questionable, if profitable, activity. You see the logic in it. You start to think that maybe a new stained glass window for the church, with your initials discreetly worked into the design, wouldn't be a bad investment. You are trapped in a social no man's land. You are too rich for the poor and too poor, in status, at least, for the rich. You have wealth, but it doesn't grant you true acceptance. You have bought your way out of poverty, but you can't buy your way into the aristocracy. You are a new kind of man in a world that doesn't quite have a place for you yet. You host a dinner for some other successful men of the town, a master mason, a goldsmith, another merchant. You serve good wine and roasted meat. The conversation is about money, about contracts, about debts, about the shifting prices of goods. It is the conversation of men who are winning the game. But underneath the boasting and the laughter, you sense the same anxiety that you feel, the knowledge that it could all be taken away. A failed shipment, the taste of success is sweet, but fleeting. The profits from your incredible luck at the fair have given you a cushion, a sense of security you've never known. But a cushion is for sitting on, and a merchant who sits still goes broke. The cloth you left in your warehouse is selling, but slowly, piece by piece, in the face of the guild's continued hostility. To make real money, to build a real business, you can't just be a shopkeeper. You have to be a traveler. You have to repeat the journey. This time, it's different. You have capital. You are not begging for a loan from Isaac. You are funding the expedition yourself. You decide to be bolder. You won't just buy Flemish cloth. You've heard rumors of a new source of high-quality alum, a vital chemical for the dyeing trade, being imported through Genoa. If you can secure a shipment and bring it north, the profit margins could be immense. It's a new product, a new route, a new set of risks. The preparation is more professional this time. You don't just hire a couple of thugs like Giles. You assemble a proper caravan. You buy 2 sturdy carts and 4 strong horses. You hire a team of 4 guards, all veterans of the French wars, and a young, eager clerk who can read and write and keep proper accounts. You are no longer a one-man band. You are the manager of a small, mobile enterprise. But this new professionalism brings a new kind of fear. Your first journey was a desperate scramble for survival. This one is a calculated risk with your own hard-won capital. Before, if you failed, you would have lost Isaac's money. Now, if you fail, you will lose your money. The stakes feel higher, more personal. The journey south is a long, grueling affair, but it's more organized than your first trip. You bypass the worst of the roads, paying the tolls without protest. You stay at better inns, but the dangers are still there. You fend off one attempted ambush, your professional guards easily chasing off a small band of disorganized brigands. You lose a horse to a sudden illness. You are delayed for a week by a washed-out bridge. The daily grind of travel, the constant low-level friction of the medieval world, is inescapable. After months of travel, you reach the glittering port of Genoa. The city is a revelation, a place that makes Bruges look like a quiet country village. It is a city of sailors and bankers, its fortunes built on the sea. Here, you negotiate for your cargo of alum, dealing with shrewd, sun-bronzed Italian merchants who make Willem the Weasel look like an amateur. You secure your prize, packed in heavy, reinforced barrels. You have invested nearly everything you have, and now you must turn around and face the journey home. This is the hidden terror of the merchant's life. The return journey is often more dangerous than the outbound one. On the way to the market, you are carrying bulky, relatively low-value goods, like raw wool, or goods whose value is not immediately obvious, like your cloth packed in barrels. You are a target, but a cumbersome one. On the return journey, after you have sold your wares, you are carrying the one thing that every thief, from the desperate peasant to the renegade knight, desires above all else: cash. You are no longer a mule, carrying a heavy load. You are a treasure chest, waiting to be opened. The profits from your alum sale are immense, far greater than you'd hoped. But this means you are now responsible for transporting a fortune in silver and gold coins back across 1,000 miles of dangerous territory. The barrels of alum were heavy and awkward. The coins fit into a single, compact, immensely tempting iron-strapped chest that you keep in your personal card, never letting it out of your sight. The weight of this chest is a constant, crushing burden on your mind. You trust your guards, but do you really trust them? What's to stop the four of them from murdering you and your clerk in your sleep one night and disappearing with the money? The sum in that chest could set them all up as landed gentlemen for the rest of their lives. Every night, you and your clerk take turns standing watch. You sleep with a loaded crossbow at your side. Your own employees have become your potential executioners. The paranoia is corrosive. You vary your route home, avoiding the main roads, taking winding, unpredictable paths. You are trying to be a moving target, difficult to track. But this takes you through wilder, less policed areas. The danger from bandits increases. You are constantly scanning the horizon, the tree line, looking for signs of trouble. Every traveler you pass is a potential scout for a larger gang. Every distant plume of smoke is a possible bandit camp. This paranoia is well-founded. A quirky but revealing aspect of medieval crime was the existence of sophisticated intelligence networks among robber bands. An innkeeper in one town might be in league with a gang of thieves 50 miles away. He could overhear a merchant boasting of a successful trip, and a discreet message would be sent ahead, alerting the gang that a rich prize was on its way. The friendly innkeeper who wished you a safe journey could be the man who signed your death warrant. You learn to be taciturn, to speak to no one about your business, to trust no one. The physical dangers are compounded by a new, more subtle threat. You are far from home, in a foreign land. A guard falls ill with a fever. You have to leave him in a village, paying for his care, knowing you will likely never see him again. One of your cart axles breaks on a remote mountain pass. It takes 2 days for your clerk to ride to the nearest town and return with a wheelwright. For those 2 days, you are a stationary, vulnerable target, marooned in the wilderness with a chest full of gold. The delay is maddening, the sense of helplessness absolute. Historians still argue about the primary motivation for merchants undertaking these incredibly perilous journeys. Was it pure profit-seeking, a rational calculation of risk versus reward? Or was there a non-financial element, a desire for adventure, status, and the freedom of the road? As you sit on that broken cart, swatting away flies, starting at every shadow, the desire for adventure, fury seems like a ludicrous fantasy concocted by someone who has never spent a night sleeping on cold ground. This is not an adventure. It is a high-stakes logistical nightmare. As you get closer to home, the fear intensifies. You are almost there. To be robbed now, after everything you've been through, would be an unbearable cruelty. The last 100 miles are the worst. The landscape is familiar, which should be comforting, but it only makes you more aware of every good ambush spot, every blind corner. Finally, You see the spire of your town's church. The relief is so overwhelming it's physically painful. You have done it again. You have navigated the labyrinth and brought the prize home. Your caravan, battered and dusty, with one less guard and a new axle on one cart, clatters through the town gates. You lock the iron chest in your warehouse, the silver and gold safe at last. You pay your men, thank them for their service, and watch them go. You are alone in your office, the silence of the room a stark contrast to the noise and terror of the road. You are safe. You are rich. You are a success. But you are also exhausted, hollowed out by months of constant, grinding. You return to your respectable house, your fine clothes, your comfortable bed. The first few days are a blissful immersion in the simple luxuries of a stationary life. A hot bath, a meal that isn't cooked over a campfire, a night of sleep uninterrupted by the fear of being murdered. You have a sense of accomplishment that is deep and satisfying. You are not just a merchant anymore. You are a magnate in the making. Your successful alum venture has made you one of the wealthiest men in town. But you quickly discover that home is not a sanctuary from trouble. It is merely a different kind of battlefield, with its own unique set of dangers and frustrations. Your family, who had largely ignored you when you were a poor apprentice, now descends upon you. A cousin you haven't seen in 10 years appears at your door, full of smiles and compliments, before asking for a small loan to start a pig farm. Your aging father, who once sold you into servitude for a handful of coins, now lectures you on your filial duty, hinting that a larger share of your profits should be flowing into his pockets to ensure his comfortable retirement. Your younger siblings look at you with a mixture of awe and naked envy. You are no longer just a son or a brother. You are a source of capital, a walking bank to be flattered, cajoled, and guilt-tripped. Every family gathering becomes a subtle negotiation, a soft-pedaled shakedown. Saying no makes you a heartless miser. Saying yes opens the floodgates to 100 other requests. Then there are your civic duties. As a prominent and wealthy burgher, you are now expected, no, required, to take an active role in the governance of the town. You are elected to the town council. This is not an honor, it is a burden. You spend long, tedious evenings in a drafty hall, listening to endless disputes over property lines, arguments about the proper price of ale, and complaints about pigs wandering in the street. You are expected to help manage the town's finances, which are a chaotic mess. You are put in charge of overseeing the repair of the town walls, a thankless task that involves haggling with stonemasons and dealing with angry citizens whose houses are in the way. It is a world of petty politics, of ancient grudges between families, of constant bickering. You thought being a merchant was about grand strategy and international trade. You discover it is also about sitting through a 3-hour debate on whether to fund a new public well. This is a fact of life for the successful medieval townsman. Wealth brought with it not leisure, but a host of time-consuming and unpaid public obligations. Your success has bought you a second job you never wanted. And then there are the dangers of the city itself. The wilderness has its bandits and wolves, but the town has its own predators, fire and plague. One night, you are woken by the frantic ringing of the church bells and the sound of shouting in the street. You look out your window and see a terrifying orange glow against the night sky. Fire, the great terror of the medieval city. The houses, built mostly of wood and packed tightly together, are a tinderbox. A single stray spark from a baker's oven or a dropped candle can ignite a catastrophe. You dress quickly and join the stream of people running towards the blaze. A whole block of houses is engulfed in roaring flames. There is no fire department. There are just lines of citizens passing buckets of water from the nearest well, a futile gesture against the inferno. The primary method of firefighting is demolition. Men with long hooks and axes are desperately trying to pull down the houses in the fire's path to create a firebreak. It's a chaotic, terrifying scene of smoke, heat, and panic. You watch, helpless, as the fire consumes the workshop of a weaver you know, destroying his looms, his stock, his home, his entire livelihood in a matter of minutes. You realize your own warehouse, filled with your precious remaining cloth, is only 3 streets away. A shift in the wind is all it would take. You spend the rest of the night on the roof of your warehouse with your clerk, stamping out the glowing embers that rain down from the sky, your heart pounding with every gust of wind. The fire is eventually brought under control, but it leaves a blackened, smoking scar in the heart of the town. Dozens of families are homeless, their fortunes erased overnight. It's a stark reminder of the fragility of your own success. Your wealth is not an abstract number in a ledger. It is a physical thing, stored in flammable buildings, in a city that is always one accident away from burning down. The other great fear is pestilence. A few weeks after your return, a ship docks at a nearby port. A few days later, the rumors begin. A strange, swift illness. People dying within days, their bodies covered in black boils. The plague. The Black Death had swept through Europe a generation earlier, killing 1/3 of the population, but smaller, localized outbreaks were a recurring nightmare. Panic grips the town. The council orders the gates to be closed. No one is allowed in or out. The town becomes a prison. Trade grinds to a halt. You are trapped. Every day, you hear the mournful tolling of the church bell, announcing another death. You see the plague carts being trundled through the streets, collecting the dead to be buried in mass graves outside the walls. You lock yourself in your house, terrified. You avoid all contact with the outside world. Every cough you hear from a neighbor, every sneeze, sends a jolt of fear through you. Is it the plague? Am I next? The air itself seems to be poisonous. A quirky but common preventative measure was to carry a pomander, a small ball of fragrant spices and herbs, or even just a sponge soaked in vinegar, which you would hold to your nose when you had to go out, in the belief that the disease was spread by miasma or bad smells. The whole town reeks of vinegar and fear. Historians still argue about the long-term economic effects of these recurrent plagues. Did they lead to labor shortages and rising wages for the survivors? Or did they create a climate of fear and instability that stifled investment and long-term planning? From your perspective, locked in your house, listening to the death bells, the only effect is a cold, paralyzing terror. What good is your wealth if you are not alive to enjoy it? What good are your plans for future trade journeys if the world outside your door is a graveyard? The outbreak in your town is a minor one. After a few terrifying weeks, it burns itself out. The gates are reopened. Life, tentatively, returns to normal. But the experience leaves a deep psychological scar. You have survived again, but you are reminded that your life is subject to forces far beyond your control. You can survive the machinations of the guild and the dangers of the road, but you are utterly powerless against a microscopic bacillus. You sit in your office, looking at the accounts your clerk has prepared. The numbers are good. Your business is thriving. But you feel no joy. You feel weary, besieged. You have come home not to peace and security, but to a different kind of war. A war against family obligation, against civic duty, against the random, impersonal cruelty of fire and disease. This safe harbor you fought so hard to reach is just as treacherous as the open sea. Years pass. The seasons turn, your hair thins, and a permanent ache settles into your lower back. You are no longer the lean, hungry youth who walked out of Ulrich's shop. You are a man in your late 40s, stout and prosperous. Your face a mask of careful, calculating composure. You have made it. You are one of the richest men in the region, a pillar of your community, your name spoken with respect and envy. You have won the game, and you have never been more miserable. The good life you once dreamed of is a cage woven from anxiety and routine. Your days are a monotonous cycle of managing your sprawling business interests. You sit in your counting house, no longer just a rented room, but a purpose-built wing of your large, stone house, and review the ledgers. You read reports from your agents in Bruges and Genoa, letters that are weeks out of date, trying to guess the future from the faint echoes of the past. You dictate letters, haggle with suppliers, and listen to the endless complaints of your employees. The thrill of the deal is long gone, replaced by the grinding weight of administration. You no longer travel yourself. The risks are too great, not to your life, but to your business. You are too important, too central to the operation, to be lost to a bandit's knife or a shipwreck. So you send younger, hungrier men on the perilous journeys you once undertook. You equip them, you fund them, you instruct them, and you wait. You wait for months in a state of suspended animation, knowing that a significant portion of your wealth is out there, beyond your control, in the hands of men whose loyalty is only as strong as the wages you pay them. Every day that passes without news is another day closer to potential disaster. The silence you once endured on the road has been replaced by a different kind of silence. The silence of waiting for a knock on the door that might bring news of triumph or of utter ruin. Your wealth has isolated you. You have no real friends, only allies of convenience and rivals who smile to your face while plotting your downfall. Your old enemy, Thomas, is still on the guild council, a constant, simmering threat. Every business decision you make is scrutinized, every success resented. You see the younger merchants look at you with the same desperate ambition you once had, and you know they are waiting for you to stumble, to show a moment of weakness, so they can pounce. You trust no one. Your clerk is competent, but you secretly have another clerk check his accounts. You lock your own counting house at night, the only one with a key. Your world has shrunk to a circle of suspicion. Even your family has become a source of anxiety. You arranged a good marriage for your daughter, wedding her to the son of another wealthy merchant, a strategic alliance to consolidate your business interests. But you see the unhappiness in her eyes. You have traded her future for a line in a ledger. Your son, who will one day inherit everything, has no taste for the business. He is soft, lazy, interested only in falconry and the expensive clothes your money can buy. He sees the wealth, but he has no understanding of the blood, sweat, and terror that went into building it. You look at him and see the seeds of your empire's destruction. A quirky but telling feature of the lives of many wealthy late medieval merchants was an obsession with creating a dynasty, with ensuring their name and fortune would endure. They would craft incredibly complex wills, leaving their business to their sons under strict conditions, and establishing charitable foundations or chantries where priests would be paid to pray for their souls and the souls of their descendants forever. It was an attempt to buy a piece of immortality, to fight back against the terrifying knowledge that everything they had built could crumble to dust in a single generation. You find yourself spending long evenings with a lawyer, drafting just such a will, trying to control your legacy from beyond the grave. The physical world, which once seemed so vast and full of opportunity, now feels like a prison. You are tied to this town, to this house, to this counting room. You look out the window at the road leading out of town, and you don't see a path to adventure. You see a landscape of risk and loss. You remember the bone-deep cold of sleeping in a ditch, the terror of the storm at sea, the searing pain of the barber surgeon's cauterizing iron. Those memories are not exciting anecdotes. They are traumas etched into your soul. Your body is a testament to the price you've paid. Your scarred arm aches when the weather is damp. Your stomach is perpetually sour from years of anxiety and bad road food. You have trouble sleeping, your mind always churning with numbers and worries. A physician, a real university-trained one this time, comes to see you. He examines a flask of your urine, pronounces that your humors are unbalanced, too much black bile, the humor of melancholy, and prescribes a diet of bland foods and less worry. It is the most useless advice you have ever received. Historians still argue about the quality of life for the successful merchant class. Did their wealth bring them genuine happiness and security? Or did the immense pressures of their profession, the constant risk, and the social ambiguity of their position create a new kind of gilded misery? You are the living answer to that question. You have everything a man of your time could want. You have wealth, power, and influence. You have escaped the brutal poverty that was the lot of most of humanity. And yet, you are consumed by a profound sense of emptiness. The chase was everything. The prize is nothing. You often think back to your first journey, to the fear and the excitement. You remember the taste of that questionable meat pie, how delicious it was before you knew what it might be. You remember the sheer, animal relief of surviving the storm. You were alive then, every nerve ending tingling with the raw, terrifying, vibrant reality of the world. Now, you are merely solvent. One evening, you walk down to the warehouse district, something you rarely do anymore. You see a young merchant, his face tight with worry, supervising the loading of a cart. He is about the age you were when you started. He is full of fear and hope, standing on the precipice of his own great, terrible journey. You see yourself in him, and for a fleeting moment, you feel a pang of something you haven't felt in years, a wild, irrational desire to trade places with him, to throw away your ledgers and your stone house, to trade your security for his terror, just to feel something real again. But the moment passes. You are too old, too tired, too trapped by the very success you built. You turn away from the young man and his cart and walk back to your large, empty house. You lock the door behind you, safe and secure in your comfortable prison. You are a wealthy medieval merchant. You have survived, and you have discovered that this hollow, anxious, lonely good life is the cruelest, most enduring punishment of all. The long, winding road of your life has led you here, to this quiet room filled with shadows and the ghosts of past anxieties. The fortune you amassed, coin by painful coin, now feels like a heavy blanket, smothering the very fire it was meant to fuel. Your story, which began with the shiver of a cold morning and the dream